She was destined to be a crown princess, yet she can only watch helplessly as the crown prince marries another. The woman is named Medea, the legitimate eldest daughter of Duke Belial's house, and once the betrothed crown princess. Today, the empire's people cheer joyfully, celebrating the crown prince and Psyche's wedding. Yet someone in the crowd gossips, saying Psyche originally lost in the competition for crown princess. But to marry Psyche, the crown prince actually framed the betrothed crown princess's family. Getting carried away, this person even dares to mock Lady Duke, saying the hot-tempered Medea will never marry. Though Medea is ruthless, she doesn't punish this commoner publicly. The next day, people find in the river a corpse with its tongue cut out. Medea stands atop a tall building, hearing this news expressionlessly. Psyche, currently on her honeymoon, hasn't forgotten Medea. She seems eager to build a good relationship with her former rival, so she specially picks out a huge, sparkling ring for her. The crown prince, ready to watch the show, fully approves of Psyche sending Medea this deeply ironic gift. While Medea sits at home listening to the gramophone, Psyche's subordinate arrives with the gift. He says the crown princess hopes he'll personally witness Lady Duke opening this gift. The gracious Medea says this isn't an unreasonable request. After seeing the delivered gift, she even remarks how thoughtful. But once the subordinate leaves, Medea smashes a lamp to vent her fury. Psyche really knows how to disgust people, sending a diamond ring, clearly intending to mock her with the ring's symbolic meaning. Medea decides to settle both new and old grudges. She'll send Psyche a grand gift. Medea sends Psyche a bouquet of calming flowers and invites her for afternoon tea. Medea says adding a sugar cube to the tea makes it aromatic. Psyche praises how knowledgeable Medea seems about tea. However, the maids nearby whispering about whether Medea is poisoning the crown princess clearly irritate Lady Duke. She remarks how approachable the crown princess truly is. Then she asks Psyche if she knows what disaster comes from the mouth means. Medea wouldn't mind letting the maids experience the crimson whip. Seeing his lady being bullied, the knight assigned to protect Psyche comes to drive Medea away. Devoted to his lady, he fears something might happen to Psyche. Medea tactfully goes home. A while later, Psyche collapses in the bedroom. Now the knight rushes off to find someone for revenge. The knight has already checked the suspicious flowers and the tea set Medea brought, but he never imagines that the flower fragrance and poison in the sugar cube, when combined, cause dizziness. What's even more unexpected, Medea ambushes him halfway and stabs straight through his heart with one strike. Medea says she wants Psyche to taste the pain of losing a loved one. Waking from her dizziness, Psyche barely manages to eat some breakfast, then rushes to the temple to pray. As for the knight's murder yesterday, the servants don't dare report it. The subordinate sent to find the missing knight is also slain by Medea's friend, Marquis Helio. This day, Psyche endures her physical discomfort and, amid blessings, successfully puts on the sacred relic for peace and prosperity. She kneels devoutly before the deity to pray. On prayer day, to prevent any mishap to Psyche, the crown prince specifically clears out the temple. But this also gives Medea an opportunity. However, Psyche isn't surprised at all by Medea's appearance. She asks directly, "What happened to my knight?" The usually strategic Medea is stunned. The soft Psyche suddenly tackles Medea. She loudly questions whether Medea hates her, saying she loves the crown prince as a person. What Medea loves is the crown princess position. This makes Medea laugh. "You think I'm someone who plays boring emotional games, passing up the empire ruler's seat?" Medea tells Psyche not to wipe her snot and tears all over her. "I have nothing to say to a big-chested, brainless woman like you." While they argue endlessly, Medea accidentally falls into the temple's pool. Psyche immediately jumps in to save her. As Medea nearly drowns, she sincerely prays to the god of Esperanto for a chance to become crown princess. Medea wants to take everything from Psyche. Waking up, Medea finds herself surrounded by a bunch of weeping fools calling her Lady Psyche. She hurries to find a mirror. She discovers she's changed from purple hair and black eyes to blonde hair and blue eyes. Is this a dream? The crown prince opens the door and enters. He can't help but grasp Psyche's hand. "I thought you'd never wake up." The thought terrified me. The crown prince embraces Medea and vows he will kill Lady Duke, who dragged the crown princess into the water. Hearing this, Medea is absolutely delighted. It seems she really has taken everything from Psyche. However, though the crown prince's proposal to kill her original body is good, according to Psyche's personality, she wouldn't agree to such cruel words. So Medea pleads on behalf of the current Psyche instead. On the other side, Psyche also wakes up, only to find her face has become Medea's. She prepares to go home, but a bunch of servants block her, constantly calling Psyche Lady Duke. Psyche finally escapes the Duke's estate and returns to her own home, but she sees the crown prince gripping her neck tightly, warning her. Medea watches all this from the side. Just by swapping bodies, the crown prince can't recognize his beloved Psyche. Their love is utterly ridiculous. The crown prince finally orders Lady Duke not to come near the crown princess. Now monitored, Psyche helplessly hugs her own arms. Lady Duke's family has far too many enemies. If she reveals her true identity, Psyche will surely die. So Psyche can only diligently play the role of Lady Duke. Marquis Helio feels like something major has happened recently. Not one of the letters he sent to Medea has been opened. Because of her crown princess status, Medea can't move around freely, so she sends the crown prince away, goes to the market to buy a messenger bird, then returns home. Arriving at the study, Medea clearly senses something wrong with the crown prince. He's actually mocking Psyche for not understanding the empire's history, and wants to give the crown princess a fairy tale book for entertainment. This contemptuous look is clearly disdaining Psyche's body. Afraid of her identity being exposed, Medea deliberately says her memory has gaps, so she wants to find clues through reading. The crown prince immediately starts acting. He pretends to embrace Medea affectionately. In reality, Medea already knows they both have hidden agendas. Psyche has it relatively easy at the Duke's house, since the Duke isn't often at the estate, and the Duchess is battling illness, so her identity won't be exposed for now. Logically, nothing should go wrong, except for that person's arrival. Helio is the young head leading the Marquis family. When he was 12, his parents died in a carriage accident. The young him was bullied by greedy people. Just when he could barely hold on, Helio met Medea. Medea. Under her guidance, Helio quickly reclaimed his family head rights, and at 18 earned distinguished service for the empire. Helio and Medea have known each other for 7 years. Psyche isn't sure if she can hide her identity. Sure enough, the moment Helio greets Psyche, he immediately senses something wrong. The clever Helio proposes a swordsmanship match with Psyche. But Psyche, the epitome of sweet and naive, how could she use a weapon like a sword? But because of Medea's body's powerful strength, Psyche actually lifts the sword easily. Yet this sword-gripping posture still catches Helio's attention. Because Medea taught Helio all his swordsmanship, Psyche's sword grip is obviously completely wrong. He's truly curious who occupies Medea's body. As Helio presses closer, Psyche imitates Medea's usual manner, loudly rebuking Helio for his audacity. She raises the sword to Helio's neck, warning him she'll kill him if he comes closer. But Helio still notices. Psyche is clearly acting. She can fool others, but not her childhood companion. Helio tentatively grabs the blade, letting the sharp sword cut his neck. This terrifies the timid, fragile Psyche, who immediately drops the sword. Psyche says that's enough. The servants gossip, since this is the first time their sparring has drawn blood. Finally, Helio puts on a bandage. He apologizes to Psyche, but then asks her whether she'll be attending the banquet at the Imperial Palace in a week, asking if he can accompany her. Psyche sees Helio holding back tears. Sympathetically, she says, of course, Helio. However, what Psyche doesn't know is that the real Lady Duke, Medea, usually only calls the man Helio. But Helio doesn't expose this. Psyche feels smug, thinking she's successfully impersonated Medea. Medea wants to contact her subordinate Helio, so she simply writes a fake letter to attract the crown prince's men's attention, then quietly delivers the real letter to her subordinate. To inform Helio of the truth about her soul swap, Medea uses transparent lemon juice as ink, writing on paper. When heated over fire, the writing will appear. The black pigeon flies away with the letter, flapping noisily, but it's shot dead by the crown prince's men. After the subordinate reports the letter's contents, the crown prince shows a sinister smile. He decides that at dawn he'll go play acting games with his carefully selected innocent. As for the real letter, Medea already tied it to a cat's tail. It's delivered to Helio's house. Early in the morning, Medea is woken up to get dressed and made up. All because His Highness, the crown prince, can't wait to see her. The crown prince enters the bedroom asking Psyche if she wants to tell him something. Medea imitates Psyche's coquettish manner. I dreamed of you. You don't know how happy I am. The crown prince says you really love me too much. But can you explain this from the letter? I'm at Psyche's house now. Don't meet Medea. Medea shyly covers her face. She discovered long ago someone monitors her 24/7. They only disappear when the crown prince is present. This is why Medea must prepare completely. Medea explains. Recently she received from Lord Helio his letter, intending to reconcile her with Lady Duke. Medea refused this request and meant to inform the crown prince. She didn't expect the crown prince already knew. She feels like a fool getting excited for nothing. The crown prince embraces Medea tightly. He even kisses her head, telling her he's just too worried about the crown princess. As he speaks, the crown prince orders a servant to bring a bracelet. He puts it on Medea, then inexplicably says, this can cover bruises. Before Medea can react, shackles are locked on her hands. The crown prince employs his cautious control methods. He tells Medea that maybe Lady Duke just wants to kill you. I'll release you from the basement before the banquet starts. And I'm doing this all because I love you. But Medea isn't love-obsessed like Psyche. She only finds the crown prince's actions absurdly laughable, dressing up abuse so poetically. It seems Medea and Psyche's soul swap is entirely about suffering in place of the innocent. Psyche's nanny even wipes tears, questioning Medea about how she could disappoint His Highness. Seems there's not one normal person in Psyche's household. Though the crown prince does this entirely to guard against the cunning Lady Duke, he'd rather imprison his crown princess than bother to protect her properly. Late at night, Psyche lies on the Duke's estate bed and notices wind outside the window. Unexpectedly, Helio boldly climbs through the window. Helio once made an agreement with Medea, knocked twice on the right window near the bed, to signal Helio is climbing through to find Medea. But this purple-haired girl shows no reaction. Helio is now more certain of the authenticity of Medea's letter. He says to the purple-haired girl, nice to meet you, Lady Psyche. Psyche's heart pounds nervously, but Helio says her reaction is far too slow. Then Helio says he's here on Medea's orders, specifically to teach Psyche how to impersonate the real Medea. There are 5 days until Psyche attends the banquet at the Imperial Palace, so Psyche begins late-night cramming. Medea's little supervisor Helio watches her, making sure this poor student doesn't doze off. Even worse, Helio says the books before her, Medea finished at age 8. Psyche looks dejected, complaining it's too hard. While Psyche buries herself in studying, Helio worries greatly whether this woman can truly impersonate Medea. After all, upbringing, common sense, and social conduct are all far too different from Medea's. But in this situation, they can only take a gamble. What Medea never expects is that the crown prince, who appears to dote on his wife, can actually lock his fiancée in the basement for days without a care. More importantly, this dungeon-like basement seems to have signs of someone having lived there. Medea guesses that the frail Psyche, before she publicly appeared at 16, could only survive in the basement. She never imagined Psyche's marriage was so hollow. On the birthday banquet day, the crown prince finally releases Medea. He has Medea dressed in finery to attend the banquet. Downstairs, the subjects shower blessings on the crown prince. Medea stands upstairs, locking eyes with Psyche below. Psyche feels mixed emotions, because last year she promised the crown prince she would celebrate his birthday well this year. But now she can only watch as the crown prince and Medea interact sweetly, in the guise of Lady Duke. And people around her speak sarcastically, saying the crown prince and crown princess truly look like a golden couple. Seeing everyone fails to notice the person in that body isn't her, Psyche nearly breaks down emotionally, wanting to go on stage to prove herself. However, Helio stops Psyche's impulsive action. He explains those people are deliberately saying it for Psyche to hear. This behavior is provoking the fallen Lady Duke. In the distance, Medea dances with the crown prince. The crown prince is puzzled why the crown princess didn't step on his feet today. Medea Medea asks the crown prince if she's improved quite a bit. Looking at the obedient crown princess, the crown prince says she's truly given him face. As the banquet nears its end, Medea finally finds a chance to meet with Helio. Because Psyche can't find Helio's whereabouts, she can only wander around. Unexpectedly, she's targeted by the bully. Though Psyche is sweet and naive, she knows this person means ill. For instance, the bully now runs her mouth. I heard Lady Duke, having lost the crown princess position, has gone mad. Psyche looks at the brainless bully, remembering before she became crown princess. She was also bullied by her. Back then, the bully failed to curry favor with Lady Duke, so she turned to bullying the fragile her, even pouring a cup of cold tea directly on her head. Now possessing Lady Duke's strong body, Psyche decides to fight back against this immoral bully. Helio climbs from a tree directly onto the balcony to find Medea. Medea teases that it's been a while. Helio seems thinner. Helio is absolutely overjoyed. His beloved is actually concerned about him. Helio can't help but express his feelings to Medea. You don't know how worried I've been about you. On the other side, Psyche, unreasonably provoked by the bully, wears Medea's chilling face. With a fake smile, she tells the bully, "You're not wrong saying I'm mad, otherwise how could I tolerate such insolence from you?" The bully now realizes her childish bullying looks so ridiculous. The other ladies nearby start smoothing things over, blaming the bully for being tactless. Seeing her successful retaliation, Psyche can't help but feel happy. Because before, being so compliant, she was always bullied by others. Now Psyche wants to live as Lady Duke, but the love-obsessed Psyche still struggles inside. She can't let go of her feelings for the crown prince. She even wants to protect a crown prince. What Psyche doesn't know is, if she were still in her own body, she'd likely already be a corpse secretly murdered by the crown prince. For instance, right now, at the crown prince's command, dozens of royal shadow guards rush to assassinate the crown princess. Helio and Medea are still chatting when a subordinate calls Medea to meet the crown prince for a tryst in the deep forest. Helio quickly hides. Unfortunately, the time is too rushed. Helio doesn't get to say that even if Medea's soul has swapped with someone else's, what he wants to protect is still Medea's soul. Medea follows the servant to the small forest. She discovers the tryst is fake. Getting herself killed is the real intention. Medea never imagined being a crown princess would be this hard. She actually needs the shadow guards to slit her throat so she can reincarnate in the underworld. In fury, Medea kills them one by one, taking down all these shadow guards. And she also guesses these shadow guards were all sent by the crown prince. It seems Medea truly is a beautiful girl possessing both wisdom, beauty, and martial prowess. Unfortunately, Medea's little follower Helio, who swore to protect Medea just a second ago, the next second runs to wipe tears for the soft Psyche. Psyche says Medea is simply amazing, playing the crown princess. Not one person suspects her. In contrast, she herself, when people say a few words, can't bear it and runs out heartbroken. Psyche worries she'll destroy everything Medea has painstakingly built. The warm-hearted Helio comforts Psyche. "Don't worry, I'm here. I won't let you destroy what Medea has accomplished. Besides, Medea is far stronger than you imagine. She won't be destroyed by such small matters. This woman's power is truly terrifying. Even though her body is weak and her limbs powerless, she still beats the assassins who came to kill her into complete defeat. Who exactly sent you?" Assassin 1 now realizes they underestimated this woman. Medea's power is truly terrifying. Assassin 1 orders everyone to get serious and kill the crown princess. Though Medea handles these assassins with ease, the weak body still struggles somewhat when blocking attacks. As for the crown prince, not having seen his fiancée in a long time, he smiles especially happily. Even the envoys who came to celebrate his birthday notice. The crown prince says on such a wonderful day, how could he not be happy? But the assassins are not happy, because Medea's explosive power makes them feel overwhelmed. They clearly confirmed which hand Medea holds her sword in, yet Medea fights with both hands, beating them into retreat. Medea looks at the 6 despicable people before her. No identity badges, mouths as stubborn as ducks. She can only let these assassins sleep forever. As corpses that can't see light, Medea dodges all the assassins' attacks. Each strike pierces a heart. During the spare moments in battle, Medea can't help but feel irritated. She doesn't know if the god-arranged soul swap is meant for her to die in the crown prince's scheme in place of Psyche, but Medea knows in her heart she's always been someone determined to fight against fate. When Medea was 8, her parents always ignored her. Fortunately, there was a kind-hearted nanny at home who, holding a doll she bought herself, coaxed little Medea, saying it was a gift the Duchess asked her to pass on. But Medea, knowing her parents' nature well, of course knew this was something the nanny bought with her own money. To gain her mother's attention, Medea often studied until her nose bled. She made study till you drop her life creed. This pained the nanny deeply, but the sensible Medea wouldn't let the nanny tell her parents. The nanny couldn't help but hold the feverish little Medea. After all, she was so small and young, yet had to study so hard. This embrace was the only warmth Medea felt. Afterward, Medea constantly studied and practiced swordsmanship, until the spring 2 years later, she got her turning point. The Duke mentioned worrying about this year's rainy weather affecting grain reserves. The clever Medea immediately thought of a good idea. Why not cooperate with the neighboring territory? They're on the border lacking soldiers to guard the city, and our own territory lacks grain. Why not make a trade? This way the territory's soldiers get training and knights gain experience. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What strategy? It draws praise from noble ladies. The Duke is also surprised by this good idea. He immediately sends people to the border, also letting the territory smoothly pass through the 2nd year's famine. After advising her Duke father, the Duke became the emperor's favorite in one stroke. Even the border count favored the Duke. But at this time, Medea also discovered something. Father gained all the honors and jewels while she only got those worthless dolls, dresses, and trinkets. This way, the one whose name will go down in history is Medea's Duke father. For more power, the Duke specifically arranged an engagement between the crown prince and Medea. Medea, looking at this father who treats her as a tool, nevertheless doesn't oppose this proposal. The kind nanny, hearing this shocking news, emotionally cries and hugs Medea, telling her she doesn't have to always let father manipulate her. But Medea explains she agreed to the engagement with the the crown prince, only to rise above the duke. The duke always asks Medea about military matters, to take the answers as his own, and report to the emperor. But Medea also keeps some tricks up her sleeve. She's preparing her revenge plan. At the tea party, Psyche, who appears sweet and naive, overhears noble ladies heatedly discussing matters about Medea. With Medea's support, our empire will surely become stronger and more beautiful. The scheming Psyche then frequently follows Medea. The irritable Medea can't help but complain about this woman always following behind her without speaking. Helios says it'd be strange if she didn't follow you. Everyone knows you're going to marry the crown prince, so they all want to perform well in front of Medea. This day, Medea passes by a street. She discovers two thugs talking to Psyche about her, saying things like Medea is fierce like a demon, while Psyche is delicate like an angel. But Psyche seems to have eyes in the back of her head. She says righteously, "You don't even know Medea, what right do you have to badmouth her?" Seeing Psyche doesn't know what's good for her, the thug slaps her hard. Just as the thug is about to strike again, Medea, the fighter, slams the thug's head against the wall. She doesn't stop until blood flows from the thug's head. This scares both thugs into fleeing in panic. The kind Medea warns Psyche not to meddle in the future to avoid hurting herself. Psyche immediately sheds sympathetic tears. "Have you gotten used to being badmouthed? It really makes me pity you." Later, Medea is deceived by Psyche, mistakenly thinking she truly wants to be good friends. Medea never refuses gatherings with Psyche. She invites Psyche to play chess and teaches Psyche some life principles. When Psyche is teary-eyed, she keeps comforting her. However, what Medea never expected was that Psyche would ultimately steal her fiancé in the name of true love, and cause her family to fall into decline. Just like now, the crown prince wants to cancel the engagement with Medea, and instead decide the final crown princess through a selection. Medea, who never fears challenges, readily agrees. Psyche, also a noble lady, receives the crown prince's invitation to the selection. The hypocritical Psyche finds Medea to discuss. She says she doesn't want this to affect their friendship, and as for marriage, being with the one you love is enough. The kind Medea feels this is an opportunity to train Psyche and encourages her to actively participate. First, she, Medea, won't be easily defeated. Second, the royal family won't make rash decisions. There must be a reason they chose you. You should have confidence. The hypocritical Psyche says happily to Medea, "I'll do my best." The crown princess selection uses a best-of-3 format. Unsurprisingly, Medea wins the first 2 rounds with overwhelming advantage. Psyche says sarcastically, "So when you said you wouldn't hold back, you actually meant it." Medea helplessly looks at her good friend, "Only you would still smile so happily after losing." At the final round, His Majesty the Emperor reads out the question, to promise how they would treat the empire's people after becoming crown princess. The emperor says though the victor is decided, he still hopes they'll try their best till the end. Medea responds to His Majesty respectfully and graciously. Psyche glances at the crown prince on stage. Her heart pounds, but the competition continues. Psyche proposes an extremely populist suggestion. This policy fundamentally serves the lower class. It seems she tried hard, but unfortunately, this strategy is impractical. While Medea is sneaking glances at His Majesty's reaction, she suddenly notices the crown prince smiling darkly. Medea thinks it's her imagination. She calmly continues answering, in the loudest voice, presenting the most timely strategy. The emperor is indeed very interested in this strategy. He excitedly jumps from his seat, praising Medea for being as excellent as her father. Medea assumes victory in the selection belongs to the emperor, and she indeed becomes the final victor. But what she never expects is that the crown prince would cheat. A mysterious woman moves through the crowd below the stage. She says Psyche is truly pitiful, holding such a predetermined competition. Is this to highlight Medea? And Psyche's just delivered impractical but very appealing speech also captured the hearts of the lower class crowd. Medea completely doesn't realize this and eagerly has tea with the hypocritical Psyche. Seeing Psyche's poor complexion, Medea asks why she's unhappy. Helio, who has already guessed everything, decides to divert attention and escort Psyche away from the duke's estate. The nanny sighs that Helio is still worried about Psyche, but Helio says he feels Psyche is not a pure and trustworthy person. On the day of the crown princess investiture ceremony, the nanny encourages Medea not to be nervous. Once she finishes the betrothal with the crown prince, the nanny will make delicious pumpkin pie waiting for her return. Psyche is amused by her loving nanny. She follows her father cheerfully. On the way, she even puts an opportunist in their place. Soon the pope arrives. Before the ceremony begins, Medea wants to ask Psyche if she has any contact with the crown prince, but Psyche acts magnanimous, saying what Medea worries about will never happen. Even if she has feelings for the crown prince, she will accept the final result. Helio, dressed in black and hidden in the crowd, witnesses Psyche's lie with his own eyes. It seems Medea is incredibly perceptive. Even at the last moment, she cannot let down her guard, because public opinion is very strange now. The people are filled with complaints, demanding justice for the fragile Psyche. Helio discovers the surge of public opinion is connected to a red-haired woman. But what happens next makes Helio abandon capturing the red-haired woman. Because as the final victor of the crown princess selection, Medea does not receive the pope's approval. The kind pope, with a gentle expression, asks Miss Psyche to come on stage to receive her crown princess coronation. This result shocks everyone present. Someone in the crowd even proclaims this result came from the pope's prophetic ability. The empire needs the true crown princess. The crown prince also puts on an act at the right moment, running down to kiss Psyche. He even says that in the final competition, Psyche's dramatic speech moved him, and from that moment, the crown prince knew Psyche was the one destined to illuminate the empire. Before becoming crown prince, he was a man, so he wants to be with the one he loves forever. Then the crown prince kneels on one knee and proposes to Psyche. This performance of breaking free from constraints for love makes all the injustice seem justified. Everyone cheers for the love between the crown prince and Psyche, except for Medea, who should have received the crown princess coronation. At this moment, if Psyche refuses to become crown princess, Medea can still salvage the situation. Unfortunately, Psyche reveals her true colors. She accepts the proposal with a blissful expression. They truly are a destined pair. Psyche Psyche, like the crown prince, is a shameless scoundrel. Despite having nothing, Psyche takes everything from Medea. When Medea returns home, she discovers her furious father is beating her nanny. Medea wants to beg for mercy, but the nanny tells her to run away quickly. Seeing the vicious duke's hammer about to fall on the nanny's head, Medea lunges forward to block this fatal blow. This leaves Medea unconscious for a week. When she wakes up, she discovers the nanny has already been beaten to death by her father. Helio wanted to stop it but had no way. Medea brings the nanny's body back from the valley. She keeps listening for any sound from the nanny. Medea feels the nanny must be alive. But the silence shatters all illusions. Medea finally realizes she has lost everything. She cries out loud like a grieving beast, and Helio beside her cannot help but shed tears for her. The source of all this tragedy, Helio knows it is all the crown prince manipulating from the shadows, and now Medea is attacked by assassins in the small forest. Even though Medea fights 6 opponents alone, she is limited by Psyche's weak body. So Medea accidentally gets injured in the eye by an assassin. Medea thinks she is about to meet her end and prepares to leave, but the cunning assassin stabs her with a poisoned dagger. Helio arrives in a rush only to find he is too late. His beloved Medea has died by the assassin's blade. He recalls a time when he performed exceptionally well. Lady Medea decided to reward Helio, but when she asked what he wanted, Helio, blushing, spoke his mind. Medea found Helio's request utterly bizarre. Helio said, "Then let me see what you look like when you're asleep," because no matter if it was dawn or night, whenever he climbed through Medea's window, Medea was always awake reading. So Helio really wanted to see Lady Medea asleep. Now Helio's wish has come true. Medea sleeps forever and will never wake again. Grieving, Helio plans to die for love and follow Medea forever. At the critical moment, naive Psyche finally proves useful. She stops Helio's suicide, and she says Medea is not dead. Medea still has one breath left. She questions Psyche about how it feels to receive God's favor. "I'm about to die in your place, assassinated by the crown prince." Psyche sadly says she's sorry. Medea asks what she's sorry for, being forced to suffer the shadow guard's murder, or swapping bodies, or stealing the crown princess position that originally belonged to Medea. All of this has caused Medea immense suffering, but Medea does not hate Psyche. She knows all the harm she has suffered comes from the conspirator in the shadows, the crown prince. Medea wants to continue questioning but can no longer open her mouth. She finally dies. Psyche also realizes the only one who would use her is the crown prince who knows her. The one who wanted to assassinate her is actually her fiancé. Psyche weeps bitterly. Her only friend died in her place, and the one behind the assassination is her own fiancé who wanted to eliminate her. Has Medea really passed away just like this? After death, she returns to the pool where their souls swapped that day, as if seeing Psyche's life memories. Here she actually sees Psyche's pitiful childhood. Psyche's own mother always told her that her birth was special. If people discovered she was a child favored by God, those who were extremely blinded would come to kill Psyche. For little Psyche, she did not care about God's favor. She was only interested in everything in fairy tale books. That's why Psyche's mother so successfully raised a romance-obsessed girl, making her dream of marrying a prince and living happily ever after. Psyche also longed for life outside. Finally, one day, the prince on a white horse rescued Psyche, who had been living in the basement. Her father even congratulated Psyche on escaping her misery. Psyche ran to find the crown prince who helped her. Over time, Psyche became mentally controlled by the crown prince. He even wanted Psyche to cut ties with her only friend Medea. After watching these memories, Medea cannot help but punch the wall. How could this possibly lead to happiness? Afterwards, Medea fully understands. There are too many terrible people around Psyche. If she wanted a peaceful life, she could only play dumb. But this also hurt innocent Medea. Soon Medea guesses what wish Psyche made on prayer day. Naive Psyche felt she had wronged too many people, so she wished to die. Unexpectedly, Medea wished to take everything from Psyche. By a twist of fate, Medea became the embodiment of beautiful, strong, and tragic, nearly dying from the crown prince's conspiracy. But fortunately, Psyche possesses divine power, the ability to bring people back from the dead. After Psyche devoutly kowtows 3 times to God, blood from Psyche's forehead drips onto the magical necklace the crown prince gave her. It is a sacred relic for praying for peace and safety, so after it reacts quickly with the blood, a brilliant light flashes past Medea. Medea is reborn. However, the first thing the formidable Medea does after rebirth is to seek revenge on that scoundrel crown prince, rather than rest and recover. Even Helio cannot help but admire. Medea is incredibly driven. Medea asks what just happened. Psyche explains everything. The sacred relic she mentions arouses Medea's suspicion. Recalling what the assassin said before dying, this is not what that person described. Medea quickly guesses the truth. It turns out the crown prince approached Psyche to steal her miraculous power of resurrection. And the reason for her current misery is this series of schemes by the crown prince. Since she is locked onto her target for revenge, Medea will definitely bring the crown prince to his death. She has Helio hand her a short sword. She makes herself appear covered in blood, so she can return to the crown prince's birthday banquet and give him a shock. At this moment, the crown prince is drinking red wine, celebrating. Not only did he obtain divine power today, but he also killed that foolish fiancée Psyche. Unexpectedly, the next second Medea appears before the crown prince using Psyche's body. She describes with a pitiful expression how she just suffered an attempted murder by criminals. And this tone and demeanor are exactly like naive Psyche. In high society, words are weapons, and according to Psyche's nature, she only needs to truthfully describe what she experienced to make everyone stand up for her. The crown prince never expected his fiancée, who should have been killed, would create such huge public opinion against him. To prevent Medea from continuing to describe the details of being hunted, the crown prince strides forward and grabs Medea's shoulder, asking who took her away. How could that person do such cruel things to the crown princess in his name? Medea, with innocent tears, says it was a woman with gray hair and narrow eyes. She took her to the place where she often secretly meets with the crown prince. Medea suddenly becomes cheerful, saying fortunately no one usually goes there. It nearly became a disaster. These seemingly casual words and actions have already sparked heated discussion among the nobles present. The crown prince's face instantly turns ashen. He orders that the banquet originally planned for 7 days ends today, and all nobles are now under house arrest. The crown prince declares, emphatically, that someone must be planning a rebellion to kill the crown princess. The people are speechless upon hearing this. They came to enjoy a feast, and now they encounter such a terrifying thing, and the crown prince forbids them from going home. But the crown prince, playing the thief crying thief, says anyone who complains will be arrested as a criminal. Afterwards, the crown prince embraces the fragile, helpless crown princess and arranges for her to return home safely. As for the true culprit, the crown prince, of course, he needs to check how his shadow guards died. Unfortunately, Medea has already anticipated the crown prince's thoughts. She arranged for Helio to stay behind early and create false wounds on the shadow guards' bodies to avoid exposing her true identity. The final forensic conclusion is that the culprit possesses great strength, a short male or a robust female. Unwilling to accept his plans being completely disrupted, the crown prince stabs the shadow guard's head twice more, and after confirming they are truly dead, the crown prince feels extremely furious. On the other side, Helio, having just finished disguising the scene, hurries back to the hall with Psyche. Unfortunately, they appear too late. The hall has been sealed off. The only way is to climb over the wall. Helio suddenly thinks of an idea, but he hesitates whether to do it, and Psyche says it's a matter of life and death. Whatever method works, use it. So the searching guards witness the scene before them. Helio and Psyche are passionately kissing on the balcony. Because the guards opened the doors so wide, Psyche pretends their intimacy was interrupted. She sternly scolds the tactless guards. The guards can only reluctantly convey the crown prince's order that guests are not allowed to linger. Then they slip to the gate, silently witnessing the romance. Psyche seems to develop great interest in Helio. The next day, out of self-preservation and thoughts of getting closer to Helio, Psyche asks if learning swordsmanship would arouse others' suspicion. Helio thinks that others do not know Lady Duke's swordsmanship level, so practicing is not strange. By the window, the maids waiting to serve eagerly discuss gossip about Helio and Psyche. Helio complains with a troubled face about the romantic rumors spreading about him and Psyche. Psyche pretends to know nothing, saying she is also troubled by this. On the other side, Medea stares blankly out the window. The first round between her and the crown prince has ended. The gray-haired shadow guard who never revealed the mastermind even unto death is hung on the city wall by the crown prince for public display. Psyche's father rushes in, questioning why his daughter wants to learn swordsmanship. Medea dismisses the count who sells his daughter for glory by saying the crown prince has already agreed, but the count asks Medea why she cut her hair short. Medea smiles and answers that naturally her state of mind has changed. Psyche, with nothing to do at the duke's estate, uses her divine power to heal the duchess, who has high hopes for her daughter and suffers from poor health. She has decided to live as Lady Duke. After all, the crown prince is determined to kill her. Psyche decides to first understand the structure of the duke's estate and learn about the original Lady Medea. She sneaks around searching through Medea's belongings. She soon discovers a locked diary with a key beside it. Just as Psyche wants to open it to see what secrets are inside, she accidentally discovers a necklace. The necklace is so beautiful. Psyche puts it directly on her neck. She even complains about why Lady Medea never told her about this necklace's existence. At the training ground, Helio tells Psyche to listen carefully. He will only teach once. Psyche says nervously that she will try. Seeing Psyche wearing Medea's face, learning swordsmanship from him, Helio cannot help but recall how Medea taught him swordsmanship before. He finds this feeling very strange, as if he is returning all the knowledge to his teacher. As a beginner practicing swordsmanship, Psyche performs well. Helio cannot stop praising her, and Psyche becomes thrilled after hearing it. She says she is ready to work hard to live on. However, Helio stares at Psyche's neck thoughtfully, because the necklace she wears is Lady Medea's nanny's relic. This is utterly ironic. It was because of Psyche's inaction that the nanny was beaten to death by Duke Belial. Now she wears the nanny's necklace and learns swordsmanship from Medea's childhood friend. Helio stops teaching and looks at Psyche grimly. He quickly yanks the necklace from Psyche's neck and walks away without looking back. But Psyche worries that with Helio taking the necklace, she cannot play the role of Lady Duke and will arouse suspicion. However, Helio ignores Psyche. In the evening, a maid comes to report that she has placed the necklace in the drawer. She says tearfully with joy that this is the first time she has seen her wear that necklace, because she always could not bear to touch it. She only looked at it wistfully. After all, with the nanny dying so absurdly, she must be lonely every night. Hearing this, Psyche is obviously confused. Her little brain finally recalls she has not seen the Duke's estate nanny for a long time. The necklace today is the one the nanny often wore when she was alive, recalling that Medea once asked Psyche, who possesses divine power, if she could save someone who had been dead for a long time. Psyche said those with fatal injuries and the already dead are very difficult to revive. As for Lady Medea's resurrection, it was just a miracle. That day, Medea silently lowered her head, murmuring that it still would not work, hiding her grief deep inside. Connecting the current clues, it turns out the nanny was killed because of her. On the other side, the crown prince is tracking down the person who saved the crown princess's life. Due to the false information Medea provided, the search reaches a deadlock. The crown prince is very dissatisfied with the progress. He comes to Medea's bedside, hoping to obtain more clues. The maid explains that the crown princess has been having frequent nosebleeds lately and has finally fallen asleep. But the crown prince does not care about this at all. He just cannot figure out if something is wrong with the dream butterfly he created. Soon the butterfly enters Medea's dream, guiding Medea to a mysterious place. Medea sees the neatly dressed nanny and is overjoyed. The nanny finally came to see her in her dream. Medea begs the nanny to please say something to her, but the nanny remains silent. Medea can only speak to the nanny alone. She does not know if she should return to her own body and does not know why she keeps hesitating. She hopes the nanny can help her decide, but the nanny does not answer Medea's question and instead says, "Miss, run away quickly." On the other side, the scumbag duke finally deigns to dine with his daughter. However, his first words are about selling his daughter to the king of Hainai. Psyche looks at the marriage proposal in disbelief. If she marries this king, she will have to leave the empire permanently. Recalling what Helio told her about the kingdom of Hainai, Hainai is a country that once invaded the empire. Unfortunately, the new king now tries to erase history, so he wants to whitewash the situation, using love at first sight as an excuse to marry Lady Duke as a marriage alliance. Psyche argues with the scumbag duke, saying marriage is a serious matter that should be considered carefully. The duke immediately flips the table and warns his daughter not to push her luck. How dare she show contempt for other royalty? Psyche is too frightened to speak. The scumbag duke keeps nagging, questioning Psyche about why rumors are spreading about her and Helio again. Did his wise daughter somehow know about his plan in advance? Psyche's simple brain cannot process this information. The scumbag duke does not want to beat his daughter to death and fail to deliver to the king of Hainai. So, as before, he targets the maid. The duke once again takes out his polo mallet, preparing to beat to death the little maid protecting her lady. Everyone else watches silently. Selfless Psyche immediately rushes forward to protect the little maid. The duke instantly loses interest, but he says mockingly that this scene is exactly like when her nanny died. Psyche can hardly believe her ears. So Lady Medea's beloved nanny was killed in this way. At this moment, Medea has awakened from her nightmare. She still has to pretend to be Psyche and give the crown prince a loving embrace. But Medea finds this action utterly disgusting. She keeps thinking that the person she wants revenge on is right in front of her. The crown prince must surely think the crown princess has no strength at all. So Medea hesitates. Should she kill her enemy now to end it all early, then burn everything to destroy the evidence? But Medea hesitates for a long time. She still decides to wait until the crown prince suffers as much as she did, then deliver a fatal blow for a more satisfying revenge. Because of what happened during the day, Psyche curls up in her blanket crying non-stop. She finally realizes what a huge mistake she made. More awkwardly, a year ago Psyche actually went to find Medea and questioned why she would give up precious friendship for false power. Medea at that time did not kill Psyche to vent her anger, she just gave a cold laugh. Looking back now, Psyche finally knows how much pain Medea was in at that time. And the cause of all this was entirely her so-called love. Staying in the estate is too depressing. Psyche plans to go find Helio the next day to discuss countermeasures. She does not know what she can still do. Living safely as Lady Medea is far from enough. When the carriage passes through the marketplace, a group of people blocks it. They shout loudly, asking if they should all make way for Lady Duke. Psyche gets out of the carriage only to discover everyone is looking at her with hostile eyes. A child in the distance even throws stones at her, loudly calling her a murderer. Psyche has no idea why these things are happening. She plans to sneak to the village entrance and find another carriage. But at the alley entrance of the marketplace, she sees someone performing a puppet show. A puppet resembling Lady Medea is labeled a witch, while the crown prince and Psyche are portrayed as good people. The storyteller says Lady Duke wants to destroy everything belonging to the crown princess, so she deliberately sent people to assassinate the crown princess. Psyche can hardly believe what she sees. Their story has actually been turned into a drama. Even worse, the victim has become the perpetrator. This day, the crown princess's father comes to visit Medea and tells her that the crown prince built a greenhouse for her. Medea says since she is already out, can she walk a bit more? But this request is rejected by the count, because he thinks his daughter is too fragile. The heavy rain outside is dangerous for Medea. The countess tells the count not to frighten the child. To comfort Medea, she even shares an amusing story with her. That Lady Duke has fallen in love with Marquis Helio. Hearing this makes Medea frown even more. Is Psyche going to steal her man again? Medea soon goes to see the crown prince. However, the obsessive crown prince did not come to sit in the greenhouse and drink tea. He specifically brings up the divine oracle to Medea, saying Medea is favored by God. Perhaps she has already heard the answer God gave. Medea thinks this divine oracle is related to her and Psyche's soul swap. She is very worried this secret will be exposed after the crown prince leaves. Perceptive Medea instantly realizes she needs an accomplice to help her escape the count's estate to further investigate the divine oracle. Just as Medea feels anxious, a freckled maid comes to remind her to return to her room after drinking tea to avoid catching cold. Medea thinks a ready-made spy is here. Before swapping bodies, the freckled maid had stolen from Medea. Medea was very angry then and sent her to be a spy by Psyche's side. So now Medea has the same way to make the freckled maid become the crown prince's spy. As Medea expected, the freckled maid steals from her again. Medea scolds her loudly. How dare she steal from royalty? The freckled maid, truly a professional thief, immediately claims Lady Duke ordered her to steal the money. But Medea questions her. How long do you expect me to tolerate you? On prayer day, you also said Lady Duke killed the servant, but you were the one who killed them. The freckled maid stubbornly glares at Medea with eyes that clearly show guilt but refuse to admit it. She even shouts about why Medea is slandering her, an innocent person. Medea does not waste more words on this liar. Previously, the freckled maid lied to Medea, saying her family was sick and she desperately needed money. Medea directly orders her to resign. Hearing this, the freckled maid immediately realizes something is terribly wrong. If she is driven away from the countess's service, what good prospects will she have? But Medea turns and walks downstairs, waiting for the freckled maid to take the bait so she can use her as a spy again. After Medea counts down from 5, the freckled maid has already already lunged forward and embraced Medea. She swears she will never betray her lady again in this lifetime. And this action is exactly what Medea wanted. Medea has her keep watch, while she goes outside the count's estate to investigate the divine oracle the crown prince deliberately mentioned. Quick as a flash, Medea takes advantage of the guard shift change. Using her soft body, she quickly escapes the count's estate. At the same time, in a distant tent, a red-haired muscular man is awakened by a manservant who urges him to get dressed quickly, or he will be called God's wanderer again. The red-haired man tells the manservant not to bother him over a mere divine oracle. Could this red-haired man be the person Medea is looking for? Finally, under the manservant's urging, the red-haired man reluctantly gets out of bed. However, he mutters that the last time he heard a divine oracle was 3 years ago. The manservant says he is right, but he should button up now and be a graceful divine messenger. The red-haired man smiles, wickedly, saying he should only dress formally in front of distinguished guests. In an instant, he flips out the window and leaves. Medea finally breathes the outside air. Even seeing a squirrel feels novel to her. She quickens her pace and soon arrives at a pawn shop. She pawns the jewelry on her for 30 gold coins, then uses it to buy a foreign girl's outfit. Seeing such a fragile woman come to the shop late at night, the waiter finds it very strange. But the girl speaks authentic Onalayan the moment she opens her mouth. Her eye color also matches the emerald green of Onalayan people. The waiter hurriedly invites the girl in. Esperanti's tavern does not care about social status. Anyone can come here to discuss freely. Moreover, Esperanti's gathers all the rumors of the empire, so it is easy to find out about the divine oracle. But after looking around, Medea discovers no one is mentioning the divine oracle. It seems this oracle has been kept exclusively by the nobles. Medea does not know if the divine oracle can help her and Psyche grasp a lifeline. As Medea shakes her head and prepares to go elsewhere to continue gathering intelligence, she hears someone discussing that the king of Hainai is about to marry Lady Duke as his queen, though others say he is just taking the crown prince's cast off. These words still deeply wound Medea's heart. At this moment, the red-haired man arrives at a crowded place, and a woman enthusiastically calls him Pearl. Young men and women all circle around Pearl. Just then, Pearl bumps into Medea passing by. Medea thinks bitterly. Is there no way to relieve the hatred in her heart? Pearl watches the beauty's departing figure and stops mid-sentence. He feels a mysterious force drawing him in. For instance, the girl who just passed by might very well be his destined person. Today is the day Lady Duke marries the king of Hainai. Heaps of jewels and silks are brought into the duke's household as betrothal gifts. The king of Hainai even produces a document. It states that Hainai will grant the duke an equivalent title in the kingdom and bestow upon the duke 1/3 of the empire's diamond mines. But the condition is that within 6 months, Lady Duke must marry the king of Hainai. The greedy duke signs his name on the document. He eagerly asks the king if this means he can obtain all the jewels and honors. The king asks if they need to seek Medea's consent, but the duke dismisses this. When has selling a daughter ever required the daughter's consent? The king of Hainai, with his own agenda, can only smile and say, "You're absolutely right, duke," but all the commotion outside has nothing to do with Psyche. Though she inhabits Medea's body and is about to be married off as Lady Duke, she feels no joy whatsoever. Psyche now knows that even the always strong Medea was merely a pawn used by the duke. She cannot help but lament. Today is not a wedding at all, but clearly a funeral forcing Medea herself to her death. Psyche has thought about struggling, but when she seeks help from Helio, he says if all else fails, just bet on the duke dying. Psyche does not understand why Helio always wants to use underhanded methods. Helio scolds loudly, then what? How should they solve the current predicament? Rely on the bedridden duchess, or himself acting in secret, or perhaps you, Psyche, who is utterly useless. He and Medea have delayed taking action because they are waiting for the perfect moment, but living like this for too long leaves no opening to strike. Psyche feels deeply aggrieved for Medea. It turns out that Lady Duke, who seemed so powerful in her eyes, also lived the same imprisoned life as herself. But if they do not escape the duke's clutches now, it will be too late. So Psyche makes a shocking decision to give the duke, who is urging her onto the wedding carriage, a surprise. Now performing high altitude diving for the duke is none other than the formerly naive Psyche. How can the duke tolerate his daughter, who he can exchange for wealth, dying like this? He urges Psyche to come down quickly, but Psyche does not obey, because Psyche is not really seeking death. She already discussed with Helio a plan to perform a vanishing act from the balcony, to successfully escape the duke's estate full of shackles. In the past, the duke would always exploit Medea in the name of family. The duke is confident that Medea's sword will never point at him, but now Psyche's act of jumping from the building is already a mark of rebellion. Psyche, standing in for Medea on the high balcony, questions the duke. Why has he always treated her as a tool? These emotions pouring out like a flood make it seem as if the voice speaking is not Psyche's, but Medea's, who has been gritting her teeth for over 10 years. The duke curses his daughter as an ungrateful wretch, but still cannot catch the cash cow he cultivated for over 10 years. Thanks to Medea's years of persistent training, Psyche successfully grabs a tree branch the moment she jumps from the balcony, then slides down from the tree. At this instant, Medea at the count's estate suddenly experiences a bout of heart palpitations. She feels an asthma attack and cannot breathe. With a thud, Medea collapses on the ground unconscious. In the moment of consciousness, Medea actually returns to her own body, though her throat burns with thirst. But the moment she opens her eyes, she is back in Psyche's body. When Psyche wakes up, she discovers her bones are broken. She wants to use her divine power to heal, but discovers the divine power has vanished. During Psyche's escape, the king of Hainai sits leisurely in a pavilion drinking tea. He seems to have anticipated this scene all along. He even smiles and nods at Psyche. Late at night, Medea prepares herself. Today she will raid the grand temple. To avoid exposing herself, Medea specially prepares a wig for her spy, the freckled maid, to have her impersonate herself and evade the spy nanny arranged by the crown prince. moments. The freckled maid whimpers in bed, praying for her lady to return quickly. Helio has already made arrangements at the Grand Temple, having coordinated with the priests for Medea, because when Medea worked with the priest before, she used her own body. So now Medea, in Psyche's body, must disguise herself to look like her former self. This way the priest will not discover that her soul has swapped with someone else's. Medea soon passes through a marketplace. A little girl's apple rolls to her feet. The child's mother originally wanted to let the child ask for the apple back independently. She even told her to say, "Please give me back my apple," but the mother looks up at Medea. Good heavens! This lady's earrings look extremely valuable, like their family's food expenses for an entire year. Afraid of encountering an unreasonable noble, the mother hurriedly kowtows an apology, but the little girl still innocently continues following her mother's instructions and asks Medea for her apple back. The usually hot-tempered Medea is surprisingly gentle this time. She not only returns the little girl's apple, but also tells the child that her mother does not need to kneel. Finally, the child and mother happily thank Medea. This is also the first time Medea has heard someone say thank you to her. At the Grand Temple, a meeting about the divine oracle is being prepared, but a certain red-haired slacker cannot be woken up no matter what. The high priest can only make excuses, telling everyone that the slacker is bedridden with illness. What a pity for such a devout child, injured so severely because of the divine oracle. So this divine oracle must be perfectly interpreted. The red-haired slacker is finally roused by guards to attend the divine oracle meeting in the middle of the night. He yawns and feels the temple has been rather noisy lately. The guard says sarcastically, "Should we find you a quiet place?" Helio, eavesdropping from the shadows, says he prefers noisy places. Medea rushes and finally arrives at the Grand Temple. However, the carriages ahead form a long line, as if someone is conducting inspections. She looks closely and sees the crown prince acting as a security guard, checking identities one by one. Medea's carriage is also surrounded by the royal knight order from the imperial palace. Medea realizes the current situation is very bad. She draws her short sword, prepared for a fight to the death. Meanwhile, the red-haired slacker finally gets up to attend the divine oracle meeting concerning the empire's survival. But on his way, he encounters Helio, who has come to gather information. The germaphobe covers his nose and complains to the guard that every time that Marquis walks by, he can smell a foul stench, like the bloody smell of rotting corpses. The cheerful guard says, "Marquis Helio is a war hero. You should not worry about this. The other high priests are probably talking behind your back." Just as the red-haired man reaches the meeting door, a booming voice from the veiled one comes from inside. "Pearl's behavior is blasphemy against the divine oracle and an act of betraying the nation. Let us dismiss him today." Then the red-haired man immediately pushes the door open. With his handsome face, he silences the veiled one's slander. The veiled one says nervously that he was just joking. After all, the red-haired slacker is the only person in the world who can translate divine oracles without consulting a dictionary. The red-haired man immediately displays his playboy nature, enthusiastically greeting the priestess. He talks about things like how the people in the territory are living, showing no intention of starting the meeting. This makes the serious old man with a white beard very angry. He fiercely tells the red-haired man to translate the divine oracle immediately, but the red-haired man is not intimidated at all. He grabs Whitebeard and questions whether he is making things difficult to monopolize a huge sum of funding. Whitebeard is instantly struck at his weak point and dares not speak. However, Whitebeard's loyal knight declares that if the red-haired man continues to be so arrogant, he will strike him down with one blow. The red-haired man tells the knight to go ahead and try. As Medea nervously undergoes the security check, the crown prince starts performing in front of the people again. This time he catches a child trafficker. Before the judicial authorities can pass judgment on the trafficker, the crown prince stabs a knife into the trafficker's heart. This action draws applause from the surrounding crowd, but the quick-witted Medea is no slouch either. She swiftly disguises herself as a knight, preparing to take advantage of the gap while the crown prince inspects carriages. She quickly slips into the Grand Temple, but the sharp-eyed crown prince notices Medea's purple hair strand flying out. Following the principle of better to wrongly kill than let escape, the crown prince orders pursuit of Medea, who has already fled. But clever Medea has already devised a plan. She deliberately confuses the crown prince's knight order, making them disperse their forces. The self-important crown prince changes his approach. If Medea came to investigate the divine oracle, she will eventually return to the duke's estate. So the crown prince directly leads people to surround the duke's estate. But what he never expected is that Psyche has already dragged Medea's body away to escape the marriage. The crown prince demands that the dead drunk duke hand over his daughter who fled the marriage today. Fortunately, the duke retains a shred of reason and does not let the crown prince barge into his daughter's chamber due to his authority. Unfortunately, the duke still cannot hold his liquor and collapses on the floor. The crown prince goes directly to Medea's room, searching for her traces. With his keen sense of smell, the crown prince detects Psyche's bloody scent. He acts as if he cares deeply about Psyche, saying, "Lady Duke, here you are. How did you get injured? Did you do something reckless?" Again, Psyche does not really want to see her former fiancé. After all, a month ago, the crown prince specifically sent people to kill Psyche. Fortunately, Medea, who was in Psyche's body at the time, helped her avoid disaster. Now Psyche does not know what feelings to have when facing this lover she once loved so desperately. She begs the crown prince to state his purpose and leave, but the crown prince smiles and asks Lady Duke what tricks she is playing now. "It is not hot enough for even your ears to be red. Why are you keeping your head so low like someone who did something wrong?" Psyche is left speechless by the crown prince's words. The one who framed Lady Medea's family and ordered her killed on the day of the banquet, and the one who whispered words of love in her ear, both were this person's voice. So even though Psyche has become much braver during this time, she still cannot stop the tears when facing her lover. Psyche even feels that no matter how capable she becomes, she will still be easily destroyed before this useless love. Psyche recalls when she used to flirt with the Crown Prince. She asked the Crown Prince why he loved her, and he answered straightforwardly, "Of course it is because you are wonderful." Psyche was not satisfied and told the Crown Prince to say it again. The Crown Prince smooth-talked, "It is because you are so radiant." But the Crown Prince before her is completely different from the one in her memories. He gives Psyche, whom he thinks is Medea, a wall slam, his hands even covered with Psyche's blood. The Crown Prince says if she had looked up at him with shame like this back then, perhaps his consort would have been her. Hearing this, Psyche bursts into tears again, but Medea will not indulge the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince will never guess what the divine oracle he is pursuing actually says. News comes from the Grand Temple that a high priest has passed away. Everyone is busy handling the priest's funeral arrangements. The bewildered red-haired man talks to the guard about the divine oracle. Hearing that the divine oracle says the empire will fall, the guard is clearly stunned. How can there be such an outlandish oracle? But the red-haired man explains clearly. The person closest to the heart of the Esperanto Empire will shatter the empire's mountains and rivers. According to the red-haired man's own speculation, there are only two people closest to the empire's heart. One is Crown Prince Arus in his prime. The other is Psyche, blessed by God. However, the person in Psyche's body now is the all-capable Medea. So the empire will ultimately fall into ruin because Medea will strike down the Crown Prince with one blow. On the other side, Psyche is not only forcibly kissed by the Crown Prince, but also promised that he will always stand by her side. Hearing this, Psyche is overjoyed and becomes even more determined to be with the Crown Prince, as long as the Crown Prince successfully realizes that she is Psyche. She is now just verifying whether the Crown Prince knows this secret. Ideals are full, but reality is harsh. The Crown Prince is not like Helio, who can recognize at a glance whether the person before him is his beloved just by the movement of her fingers. The Crown Prince always thinks the person in Medea's body is still Medea. Psyche asks the Crown Prince, "Your Highness, have you never loved Psyche?" The Crown Prince strokes Psyche's hand and says, "Your perception is quite good." Now Psyche's heart is finally broken. After the Crown Prince leaves, Psyche lies on the bed alone, crying her heart out. According to her nature, as long as the Crown Prince admitted he loved Psyche, Psyche would have revealed everything. Now recalling the kiss the Crown Prince gave her and his past promises, Psyche feels nothing but disgust, especially when, before leaving, the Crown Prince told Lady Duke she must not give up the Crown Princess position. Psyche guesses he will definitely try to assassinate her again. When that time comes, Psyche will be fully prepared to thoroughly expose the scheming Crown Prince. Helio finally sees the Medea he has been longing for. After meeting, they embrace tightly. Helio cannot help but feel sorry for his beloved. Just a few days, and you have lost weight again. The Count's estate is like a prison for you. But the most important thing is to deliver intelligence to Medea. Medea asks Helio if he discovered the divine oracle. Suddenly her head starts aching, as if she is trapped in a whirlpool. It seems Psyche's soul is like a wireless connection. Even when not in the body, it can send commands to the body during moments of extreme grief. Helio rests on Medea's knee, quietly waiting for her to feel better. Then he presents the divine oracle. Now Medea has finally obtained, through great effort, the divine oracle the Crown Prince mentioned concerning the empire's survival. She is obviously very pleased. However, after Medea finishes reading the divine oracle, she suddenly becomes furious. She even says, "What kind of guardian deity is this? It cannot help with anything." Helio is also curious why the usually composed Medea suddenly erupts in anger. It turns out what shocks Medea is, the person closest to the heart of the Esperanto Empire will shatter the mountains and rivers. This is actually the complete divine oracle, according to Medea's speculation. It refers to Psyche and Crown Prince Arus. If Arus also knows this oracle, he will surely strike Psyche down and conveniently portray himself as a hero. It seems the Crown Prince suddenly went to the Duke's estate to find Lady Duke, telling her to continue striving for the Crown Princess position. He must have ulterior motives. Medea now needs someone who can deliver a fatal blow to the Crown Prince, someone with high status and authority, and this person cannot be the Pope who once betrayed Medea. At this critical moment, something the Crown Prince never expected happens. The red-haired man stands at the front of the church. Voices rise in commotion as people discuss why the Pope did not drive him out, and why the red-haired man's clothes are so dazzling. The Pope even asks the red-haired man if he must announce it here. This is too sudden, but the red-haired man insists the time has come. Unable to persuade God's wanderer, the Pope can only call for everyone to be quiet. Then he introduces the red-haired man's true identity to those present. "Please revere him as you revere me. From now on, Pearl will serve as cardinal and assist me." The Crown Prince has been waiting for Pearl outside for a long time, he says with an awkward smile. "I thought you were going to hide your identity forever." Tall Pearl stands before the Crown Prince, looking down at him from above. "You rarely use honorifics with me." The Crown Prince does not answer Pearl's question directly, but instead asks when he returned to the city. But unexpectedly, Pearl has already discovered the Crown Prince's calculations. He leans close to the Crown Prince's ear and says, "Did you not plant your confidants early, arriving here with such perfect timing? Is it because you fear your mask will be torn off in front of everyone?" The knight standing guard nearby thinks Pearl is going to harm the Crown Prince and immediately draws his sword. The Crown Prince cannot turn hostile in public and tells the knight to lower his sword. However, the Crown Prince still mockingly sneers at Pearl, saying he is just a cardinal in name only. The temple guards are not even here to protect him. But the temple guards are no pushovers either. Their leader tells the knight order not to cause trouble at the temple. The Crown Prince is so frightened he does not dare even make a sound. Before leaving, the Crown Prince seems to remember something and warns Pearl not to covet someone else's Crown Princess. Pearl frowns. Could the Crown Prince be talking about Psyche? Helio is reporting one last matter to Medea. The King of Hainai, with unknown intentions, has still not given up on Psyche. He even had a jeweler prepare medicines that help heal injuries. Medea also finds it suspicious, so they speculate whether Hainai might knock Psyche unconscious and take her away to establish relations with the Empire. Medea thinks that before Psyche's foot heals, there should be no way to hold a wedding. Just as Medea finishes putting on her cloak and is about to leave, Pearl, who is rushed over, blocks the carriage door. "We have met before, miss." Only then does Medea realize Pearl is the red-haired man who followed her yesterday. Although Medea has not said a word, Pearl continues chattering on. "You do not know how much I regret missing you. I thought if I met you again, it would surely be fate." These few sappy lines from Pearl seem relatively normal. However, next he says to the bewildered Medea, "I absolutely cannot miss you, murderer." Medea is so exasperated she has to laugh. Is it reasonable to speak so harshly to a beautiful girl late at night? And he even breaks the carriage window with a wooden stick. But Pearl says confidently that he can see the shadow of a victim in Medea's soul. Medea immediately realizes this person is no ordinary man, so she dashes away several meters. Unfortunately, Pearl is even faster than her. He even leisurely twirls his staff. "From your evasive movements, I can see your skill. If you have skill, then have a showdown with me." Medea watches Pearl boast. She really wants to ask when such a character appeared in the Empire. A sword lies before the two of them. The two, about to engage in a life-or-death duel, both reach out. But Medea is still in Psyche's body, so her strength is somewhat weaker than the tall Pearl's. Medea only grabs the scabbard, while Pearl grabs the blade. The triumphant Pearl immediately swings the sword at Medea, but Medea dodges and blocks Pearl's descending blade. Soon Medea discovers that Pearl is just attacking without strategy and never strikes at her vital points. Therefore, she has a bold hypothesis. This dense man, Pearl, probably will not kill her. To quickly end Pearl's boring and immature competition, Medea charges straight toward Pearl's sword. Sure enough, Pearl quickly pulls away his swinging sword and curses, asking if Medea is insane. Taking advantage of this opening, Medea dashes away again and successfully escapes Pearl's bizarre and frantic pursuit. Guards who rush over find Pearl and ask if he got a clear look at the woman. Pearl says she was too heavily covered, he just wasted his effort. Injured Psyche mysteriously feels a surge of power entering her body. She even feels the divine power has completely become hers. Psyche looks at her injured leg. She decides to test the strength of her ability and relieve her pain. However, her confidence is instantly crushed. After a warm current flows over the wound, Psyche removes the bandage only to discover her leg injury has actually worsened. Sad as she is, Psyche does not cry endlessly like before. She just rests her head on her knees, neither eating nor drinking. The servants are all speculating. Yesterday the Duchess fell seriously ill, and the Duke got dead drunk. Now the young lady is in this condition. The Duke's estate will fall into decline from now on. Medea just returns to the Count's estate. A maid brings news that the Crown Prince is waiting to see her. Medea can only suppress her anger and run toward the Crown Prince with a seemingly happy expression, as if she does not want to kill this scoundrel Crown Prince but rather wants to be his fangirl. The Crown Prince smiles and says, "Why do you act as if we have never met?" Medea thinks to herself, 6 hours ago, you were chasing me at the temple. But she only says, "1 day apart feels like 3 years." The two walk along, exchanging pleasantries. The Crown Prince says seeing Medea makes him forget all worries and sorrows. Medea says, "Same here," but she gradually realizes something is wrong. Why is the Crown Prince walking with her this time, without bringing a single attendant? He must be up to something. Sure enough, the Crown Prince casually picks up a bird from the ground. He coaxes Medea, saying, "This bird is weak, pitiful, and helpless. Hurry and save it." Only then does Medea realize this is the first time the Crown Prince has acted so self-righteous. He is setting a trap, waiting for her to slip up. Helio realizes he may have made the wrong decision again, because Helio's subordinates report that the people he sent to protect Lady Medea were ambushed by unknown creatures. He should have escorted her himself. Helio thinks regretfully. Even in the Empire's war 3 years ago, he made the wrong decision. The victorious army was preparing to return home when a soldier suggested taking a shortcut so they could see their families sooner. Helio voiced his concerns. He did not approve of taking the risk, but Helio could not resist the soldiers' pleas. They ultimately took the path where enemy troops lay in ambush, though they ultimately won a great victory. Many former comrades never made it home to the families who had been waiting. Thinking again of the nanny's death, Helio could have fought with all his might to protect the nanny after Medea fell unconscious, but he ultimately feared the Duke's retaliation would destroy everything he had worked so hard to build. Helio followed the servants disposing of the body. They laboriously threw the nanny's corpse down the mountain, but after the servants finished, they were slaughtered by men in black. The servants asked who they were. The men in black said, "Our master is the renowned Duke Belial." The Duke's estate servants then had their throats slit. Watching everything from a tree, Helio realized the scumbag Duke, to be absolutely certain, had actually sent 2 groups to complete the nanny's murder. Helio finally found the nanny's body. She still had 1 breath left. Helio held the nanny's hand and said he was sorry. The nanny said she understood Helio. Finally, Helio watched helplessly as the nanny took her last breath. Though Helio had fantasized about saving the nanny, letting her hide her identity so she could reunite with Medea later, everything seemed so unrealistic, because in the end, the nanny could not bear the physical pain and asked Helio to give her a quick end. Even more heart-wrenching was the nanny's last words. Lady Medea cannot escape her birth family. Now Medea, looking at the cunning Crown Prince, realizes she seems to have found a way to switch bodies back. Psyche deliberately experiments bit by bit according to the book's teachings. She unwillingly clutches her head, thinking she will surely succeed in using the mysterious power she just obtained, and deliver a devastating blow to the cold-blooded cunning Crown Prince. Facing the Crown Prince's test, Medea directly crushes the bird to death and tells the Crown Prince that using divine power now cannot revive the bird. But the Crown Prince smiles sinisterly, exposing the fact that Medea cannot use divine power. Medea plays dumb. "What do you mean by that?" The Crown Prince seems to have seen through the truth. "I think it has to do with your memory loss." Medea intended to use use her acting to deceive the crown prince. But unexpectedly, he directly sends 2 people to restrain Medea, saying he will help Medea remember before Medea can stop them. She is taken to the dungeon where Psyche spent her childhood. The crown prince acts self-righteous, saying how can the crown princess forget she is the future empress? Losing her divinity means she cannot protect the people. So Medea must be locked in the dungeon to reflect properly. But in truth, this is clearly the crown prince's plan. He will kill her before Medea becomes empress. The crown prince is especially good at glorifying himself. This is trauma therapy, and this preparation is even more thorough than on prayer day. Seeing she cannot persuade the crown prince, Medea places her hopes on Psyche's mother. Originally, Psyche's mother said nothing, but just as the door is about to close, the mother suddenly collapses backward. At this critical moment, Psyche also collapses on the ground covered in blood from trying to break through her own energy limits. She is in so much pain she has no strength left, wondering if falling asleep would solve everything. But then Psyche recalls her mother's advice from childhood: do not harbor hatred toward others. Psyche instantly realizes something. As a sacred vessel, divinity cannot be used to harm others. So in an instant, Psyche lets go of her hatred for the crown prince. With a sudden surge of effort, she returns to her original body. Her mother seems to have anticipated this and asks if Psyche has returned. Psyche says tearfully with joy that she has indeed returned. The crown prince looks excited. He pays no attention to his mother-in-law who just fell down the stairs. Instead, he asks Psyche if she can use her divinity again and if her memory has returned. Things having developed to this point, Psyche finally understands that this seemingly affectionate man is utterly cold-hearted. She smiles and says to the crown prince, "Let us break up." Medea, having returned to her own body, also realizes the timing is frighteningly precise. After settling everything, Psyche returns to her room. Recalling the past when Psyche wanted to cut her hair short, the crown prince said he preferred her with long hair. This time, Psyche has no more hesitations. She cuts off the hair that symbolized her shackles. The crown prince keeps asking if Psyche is angry, and that is why she wants to break up. The crown prince, always used to being flattered, is truly not accustomed to being dumped. He even wonders if Psyche has fallen for Pearl. To appease Psyche, the crown prince lavishly sends her heaps of gifts, but Psyche chooses to throw all the gifts downstairs. The guards and maids are all shocked. They all say this must not be done, but Psyche smiles and says, "Open the next gift for me." Finally, only one gift remains. The guard says, "Just sign your name and this lake will be yours." Before he finishes speaking, the transfer agreement is torn to shreds by the bold Psyche. The guard, watching everything, silently weeps. "If you do not want it, you could give it to me." But the last item presented is something Psyche cannot refuse: a sharp sword encrusted with diamonds. Psyche accepts it gladly. When someone tries to assassinate her again, Psyche will have a way to defeat them. Medea sits in her seat, carefully examining the invitation from the crown prince to attend a palace banquet. She does not hold it steady, and the invitation falls under the table, but she discovers a book hidden underneath. Curious, Medea opens it and flips through. She discovers Psyche has actually made serious notes in the book. It seems during this time, Psyche has truly grown well. Then Medea gradually realizes something is wrong. Psyche actually wrote, "Defeating Medea. Lady Medea does not necessarily have to become crown princess to be considered successful. Now that your brother has run away from home, Medea must become the young duke to continue the duke's family." It must be said that Psyche's little trick successfully pleases Medea. Helio climbs through the window as usual, entering Medea's bedroom. After 2 knocks on the window, Medea reacts. Only then does Helio realize his beloved has finally returned to her own body. His delicate face flushes red as he hurries forward to greet her. Medea ruffles his hair like petting a puppy, saying Helio has worked hard during this time. This moves Helio to tears. Medea sits face to face with Helio. She soon discovers her man has dark circles under his eyes. Helio timidly says he had nightmares. Medea's face darkens. She asks if he's still going to lie about the nanny dying at the duke's estate. In truth, Helio helped end the nanny's suffering. He strangled her with his own hands. But Helio doesn't want Medea to know this, but observant Medea noticed mysterious bruises on the nanny's body. The scum duke wouldn't knock someone unconscious and then let them die painlessly. Plus, Helio's words that day had inconsistencies, so Medea quickly guesses the truth. Medea just doesn't want to believe it. Of the 3 people she trusted most, one betrayed her, another left her forever, and died at the hands of the 3rd person she trusted most. But now Medea is ready to hear the belated truth. Helio recounts the facts exactly as they happened. He's willing to accept any punishment. After all, his inaction was also one of the reasons the nanny died. Medea recalls the nanny's last words, "Run," but she couldn't even fulfill the nanny's dying wish. But now isn't the time to hold Helio accountable. They still have much to do, like going right now to find the temperamental duke father and give him a beating, to wake the duke up and tell him the master of the duke's estate needs to change. Outside the office, a group of bruised and battered servants blocks Medea's path. The duke, having had a rough time lately, constantly beats and berates servants and smashes wine bottles. Now he's blind drunk, and everyone fears he'll hurt Lady Medea. But Medea walks in fearlessly. She touches her already sleeping father. She stares at the ruby on the family head seat, symbolizing status and position, then looks at the deep wrinkles on her father's hands. Finally, Medea talks to herself for a while in front of her father. She seems determined to overthrow the scum duke's stranglehold on the family. The heir to the duke's estate needs to change. The maids wipe Medea's injured wrists. They say lately, Lady Medea has become both strong and gentle, making people adore her even more. Medea knows this is all Psyche's doing. Seeing firsthand the changes at the duke's estate, Medea realizes Psyche is quite clever. Psyche really wants sweets right now. The spy nanny says she'll have the kitchen prepare some, but Psyche has other plans. She wants to go out to eat, making it easier to contact Lady Medea. The nanny hesitates for a moment, saying she needs to ask the count. Psyche stares blankly at her actions. plans. Perhaps this is her real daily life. When living as Lady Duke, she didn't need anyone's permission to do anything. But because of the Crown Prince's guilt complex, the Count Father quickly lets Psyche go out. This delights Psyche beyond measure. But the Crown Prince still has the coachman secretly monitor Psyche's every move. Truly the Empire's #1 lunatic, though his scheming still can't match Medea's thoroughness. Psyche arrives at the dessert shop. Everyone flatters her. Psyche hasn't enjoyed this treatment in a long time. When she was in Lady Duke's body, she only received coldness. Soon everyone starts gossiping at the tea party. The topic is actually that Medea wants to kill Psyche, but Psyche can't stand listening to this. These are clearly the Crown Prince's rumors about Medea. The Crown Prince is the one who truly wants to kill Psyche. Just then, a vase is knocked over by a maid. Psyche looks at the maid and discovers she's actually from the Duke's estate. Clever Psyche immediately guesses that Medea must have deliberately sent someone to lead her over. Eager to see her idol, Psyche makes excuses to leave the tea party. She quickly runs toward where the maid disappeared. Sure enough, behind the curtain, Lady Medea sits quietly waiting for Psyche's arrival. Psyche still can't quite believe the scene before her. Lady Medea has truly returned safely, but now isn't the time for a reunion. Medea called Psyche over mainly to figure out how to switch bodies back. Psyche is still so emotional. She lunges into Medea's arms, embracing her with tears streaming down. We've really been through so much. Medea also gently pats her back. Hearing Medea's meticulous plan for luring her here, Psyche is once again impressed by Medea's wisdom. She also learns that the coachman who brought her is actually a spy, but Medea explains. She discovered long ago that 90% of the people at the Count's estate have been bought off by the Crown Prince, but the freckled maid Psyche brought out today is someone Medea arranged in advance, so there's no need to worry. Psyche looks at Medea with tears welling up. She says she only now realizes how deranged the Crown Prince is. Psyche really hopes she can be as close to Medea as before. Medea also looks at Psyche with compassion. After experiencing Psyche's desperate captive life, she understands Psyche's past betrayal, but Medea still doesn't quite understand why. After returning to her own body, even the leg injury and traces of poisoning completely disappeared. Psyche demonstrates her newly mastered divine power. This uncontrollable power is enough to scorch flowers. Medea watches everything before her in amazement. Psyche used this power to stop her heart. The side effect was that her leg healed. Now the most important thing is not to let Psyche be deceived by the Crown Prince again. So Medea states, without a trace of slander, the Crown Prince's true purpose in approaching her. That is to steal Psyche's divinity so the Crown Prince alone can become the supreme god. So Medea needs Psyche to tell her everything she knows. Looking at Medea's determined gaze, Psyche no longer hesitates. She says she met the Crown Prince when she was little. Back then, she accidentally killed a group of criminals in an alley with her divine power. The young Crown Prince happened to walk by, asking Psyche who did it. Psyche thought she'd caused a catastrophe and quickly protested she didn't kill them. The young Crown Prince's guards emerged from the shadows. They said the people on the ground were vicious criminals. Psyche didn't know how to face what was before her, but the young Crown Prince had already mastered manipulation tactics, constantly stroking Psyche's head to comfort her. He carefully asked Psyche's name. Later, Psyche fainted from exhaustion. After hearing everything, Medea speculates that the Crown Prince started targeting Psyche's mysterious ability from that moment. But right now, protecting Psyche is the top priority. But Psyche remembers something. The noble circles are spreading rumors that Medea wants to kill Psyche, but Medea doesn't plan to clarify this, because in her assumption, the Crown Prince will definitely find ways to pin every harm to Psyche on her. Because too much time has passed, the coachman anxiously starts looking for his young lady to prevent any accidents. Noticing the coachman's movement, Medea and the maid quickly find a place to hide. Psyche snaps at the coachman, "What's your hurry?" Before leaving, Psyche recalls Medea's words, "No matter what rumors spread, you'll believe me, right?" Psyche vaguely senses that Medea is planning something big. Medea's first move is to cut off the Duke Father's contact with the outside world. When Count Got wants to see the Duke Father, Medea calmly sends him away. The Duke doesn't understand why. Chatting with the Count might improve his mood, but Medea deflects with her father's own words. "Didn't you say the Duke family can't easily show sincerity to people? Rather than let him see you in this state, better to turn him away." The Duke thinks his daughter is caring for him. He has Medea open a box. Inside is the family head's heir ring. Medea's second step is spreading rumors to make people believe the divine oracle says Medea will kill her father. Outside the Grand Temple, voices clamor. Many nobles paid money but didn't receive the oracle's content. They feel extremely indignant. A bald man steps forward to explain, "Everyone, stop demanding refunds. The gods won't bless you if you demand refunds." This rash action quickly gets him pelted with rotten eggs. The scene descends into chaos. Then rumors spread about Medea killing her father. After Betty finishes tidying Medea's room, she discovers many servants are packing their bags. Betty asks what they're doing. The servants say they want to flee the declining Duke's estate. Plus, everyone's been spreading rumors that the lady will kill the Duke, and this act will cause the Empire's downfall. Naive Betty says those are all baseless rumors, but the servants firmly refuse to work at the Duke's estate anymore. Betty is furious. The lady works herself to the bone for the Duke's estate. Yet the household servants are so disloyal. But someone argues, if the royal family hears such rumors, won't Lady Duke be labeled a traitor? Just then, Medea appears. She's quite satisfied with the current scene. Next, she convenes a meeting to discipline the servants as the family head. Medea stands on the platform and says, "You should know why I've called you here. Those who want to leave, I can give triple severance pay." A young maid is very tempted after hearing this. She immediately raises her hand to indicate she wants to leave, but Medea fires a shot, taking her life. This act of making an example truly makes the servants wary. Medea says, "Anyone else? I can write recommendation letters for you to work at other noble houses." Everyone is silent at first, but one child desperately wants to live. Staying or leaving both seem like dead ends. She decides to take a gamble. Medea appreciates this child's courage, so when others follow and raise their hands, Medea doesn't go on a killing spree. Instead, she feels somewhat relieved. Medea asks for the list of servants preparing to resign and plans to arrange proper placements for them. The persistent Count Got will visit the Duke's estate again in 3 days. Medea feels the timing is clearly perfect. This day, Count Got arrives by carriage at the Duke's estate, saying she came to warn the Duke about the rumors outside. The rumors say Medea will kill the Duke father with her own hands, so she urgently wants to inform the Duke of this news. She expected the Duke to be gravely ill and the estate to appear quite destitute. But as soon as she enters, Count Got sees servants respectfully lined up in 2 rows. The butler greets her attentively at the door. After entering, fresh tea is served. This greatly surprises Count Got. She came to witness a joke but is clearly shocked. Soon, Medea appears in full formal attire. She appears before her father's secret lover. The Count says she's pleased to see Medea. Medea asks if she came to see her father. Though Count Got receives a reply, she vaguely feels slighted. Medea says her father is gravely ill now and has handed all family authority to her. Tell me what you need. But Count Got doesn't dare ask Medea if she truly intends to kill her own father. But how could Medea let this old schemer off? She grabs her tightly, forcing Count Got to say why she really came. Seeing the situation, Count Got doesn't bother lying. She directly asks about the patricide. This truly crosses Medea's line. She orders everyone else out so she can talk face to face with Count Got. The next second, 2 hard slaps land on Count Got's face. But Medea isn't flustered at all. Instead, she says if her father knew what was just said, he might slit your throat. You'd better stay home during this time. Injuries on your face will damage your status and dignity. Count Got, knocked to the ground, slowly gets up. She tells Medea, the acting family head, not to celebrate too soon. Hearing this, Medea laughs. She stands up and advises Count Got not to stubbornly refuse to admit defeat. Finally, Medea sees off Count Got, who wraps a scarf around herself to hide her shame. She even plants a spy by her side. Sitting in the carriage, Count Got is furious. She was actually outsmarted by a young girl, but the leverage Medea holds is too great. 7 years ago, Medea witnessed Count Got having a secret meeting with her father. If Count Got doesn't obey Medea, and this matter gets publicized, it will destroy Count Got's reputation. Psyche is also executing Medea's plan. She deliberately cries in front of the spy nanny, saying she regrets breaking up with the crown prince. The purpose is to test whether the nanny will tell this to the crown prince. The nanny pretends to comfort Psyche, telling her not to think about the crown prince during this time. But in reality, after soothing Psyche, she immediately passes the news to the crown prince's subordinates. Hearing this news, the crown prince is overjoyed. It seems this lovesick woman still can't live without him. According to Medea's prediction, as long as Psyche cries to the nanny about heartbreak, the crown prince will definitely come by carriage to find Psyche the next day. Sure enough, the crown prince really has his guards drive the carriage to the count's estate. Psyche sits on the count's estate balcony and sees the crown prince driving a carriage in the distance. Earlier, following Medea's plan, she deliberately leaked to the spy nanny that she wanted to reconcile with the crown prince. Now seeing the crown prince rushing over, Psyche realizes that everyone at the count's estate is the crown prince's informant. No one is on her side at all. On the carriage, the crown prince smugly listens to subordinates report news of Medea dismissing servants. He speculates the duke's estate might be declining, but the crown prince doesn't believe Medea will simply give up. After all, he sees Medea as his future empress to help build his empire bigger and stronger. Strong Medea will surely find another way. If Medea knew the crown prince had such thoughts, she'd probably spit in his face, clearly rushing to find Psyche, yet still thinking about her. Pure delusion. Psyche feels especially dejected after realizing the nanny's betrayal. She silently sheds tears, wondering if she's too weak and easy to bully. But then Psyche looks at the divine power glowing in her hands. She thinks she will gradually become stronger. Psyche walks step by step toward the waiting crown prince, silently repeating in her mind that she must end this completely with no ambiguity. Soon, looking at her former lover, Psyche speaks the word she's repeated in her mind 100 times. "Let's break off our engagement, your highness." The crown prince presses his lips together. Psyche wonders if the crown prince will fly into a rage or forcibly embrace her. True to form, the crown prince says he doesn't deserve to miss Psyche. Psyche becomes assertive at this moment. If apologies worked, we wouldn't need justice. If you truly want to apologize, please break off the engagement. Seeing Psyche speak such harsh words, the crown prince pulls out his stellar acting skills and starts crying. "Do you hate me that much?" Pearl strides boldly into the duke's estate. As soon as he goes upstairs, he knocks the guards head over heels. He grabs Medea with one arm, indicating he wants to have an in-depth conversation with her. Medea finds the scene before her amusing. Barging into the duke's estate single-handedly, "Pearl, do you think you're in a fairy tale?" As soon as Medea finishes speaking, a group of shadow guards rush up to surround Pearl. But Medea does want to talk with this guy. After sitting down, Medea cuts straight to the point, asking why Pearl came. Pearl doesn't hide anything either. He immediately asks Lady Duke if she has seized control of the Duke family's power. He strongly suspects Medea is prepared to commit patricide. But Medea bursts out laughing. "So after all that, Pearl only came to ask about this meaningless matter. I heard Pearl is a famous hero of the people. To save twins from a fire, he rushed into the flames twice. For years he's been at the Empire's borders punishing evil and promoting good." Pearl is surprised that Medea investigated him behind the scenes. Could it be that Medea has a crush on him? On the other side, the crown prince is saying how regretful he is, wishing time could turn back. He's the one who wanted to imprison Psyche in the dungeon. He's the one who caused Psyche's mother to fall down the stairs. Yet he has the audacity to say, "Psyche, how can you be so cold-hearted and unreasonable?" Psyche has never seen the crown prince cry before, but she won't forget that when she was in Medea's body, the crown prince said he never loved Psyche. How could she believe the crown prince's lies again? But the crown prince starts using moral blackmail tactics. The crown prince says since Psyche has already become crown princess, she must bear the responsibilities of the royal family. At worst, divorced, treated as a political marriage. Seeing the crown prince say this, Psyche seizes the opportunity. She agrees not to cancel the engagement for now. The condition is giving the crown prince a deadline. Win back Psyche's heart within 100 days, or let her go. Looking at Psyche's beaming smile, the crown prince realizes he just walked into a trap. Perhaps from the day Psyche proposed breaking off the engagement, she wanted to use this as a bargaining chip. The 100 days should be a countdown to the crown prince and Psyche breaking off their engagement, intended to delay when he makes his move against Psyche. Psyche's plan proceeds smoothly. Medea's plan to win over the wolf-like Pearl can't fall behind either. Pearl says he doesn't want to defeat Medea as an outlet for his sense of justice. He just wants to prevent the empire's downfall. Medea exposes Pearl's identity on the spot. What you say makes sense, Cardinal. Pearl suddenly understands. You also paid for information. Otherwise, how would Lady Duke meet alone with someone of unknown identity? Lady Medea seizes the opportunity to propose her idea. Join forces with me, Cardinal. I very much want to have the popular support and social skills the Cardinal has gained. But Pearl refuses. Right now, Medea can barely protect herself. How could she possibly help me? But Medea sneers. Do you really think I'm just a fallen duke's daughter? Seeing the aura before him so similar to a certain woman, Pearl instantly understands. Medea is the one who went to the Grand Temple heavily disguised to gather information. He didn't expect her to admit it openly. Pearl still can't believe it and wants to test Medea. The Crown Prince is strictly investigating the temple recently, saying someone spread a false oracle from the temple. Did you bribe a priest? Medea doesn't answer this question. Instead, she changes the subject. Is that how you see me? Only then does Pearl realize Medea is trying to win him over right now. But Pearl doesn't understand why Medea chose him specifically. Could it be that, considering my position, personality, and the oracle, she deliberately lured me here? But Medea points out bluntly, because, Cardinal, you despise the Crown Prince, don't you? Now Medea and Pearl arrive at the Duke family's washing yard. They want to have a fight. If Medea wins, Pearl must cooperate with Medea. But Pearl thinks this is too easy. Underestimating her, he says he'll add one of his eyes to the wager. If Medea loses, then her pinky finger and the family head's ring will both fall into Pearl's hands. The stakes of this wager seem far too high, but the always confident Medea still agrees, because she plans to change Pearl's stubborn temperament through this duel. The duel rules are, steal Medea's handkerchief or step outside the arena circle to lose. Since both are capable warriors, they don't need a referee to determine the winner. Pearl strikes first. A flying blade shoots toward Medea. Medea refuses to back down and forcefully catches the strike, but the mysteriously confident Pearl still feels he's superior. Medea anticipated this would be a tough battle with Pearl. Pearl is so strong he was awarded a sword by the royal family and fought on battlefields. Moreover, when Medea was in Psyche's body, they already exchanged blows once, so both understand each other's fighting styles. Calling it a battle of wits isn't an exaggeration. Pearl says confidently, you're used to dodging to compensate for lack of strength, then sneak attacking, but that won't work this time. Medea also feels that the tall and mighty Pearl, now in his optimal fighting state, has no time to think about tactics in the instant of attack. Moreover, Pearl will instinctively attack vital points like a beast, but Medea isn't an ordinary knight. She believes she can defeat Pearl. Playing unconventionally, Pearl knocks the sword from Medea's hand at this moment. He wants to fight Medea barehanded, but Medea pretends to pick up the sword. After entering a blind spot, she kicks Pearl's hand hard, making Pearl forget how to attack. Medea also says, win first before talking big. Finally realizing he was too arrogant, Pearl isn't flustered at all. Instead, he asks Lady Duke, why did you only appear in my life now? How fascinating. Then Pearl launches another fierce attack, pushing the overwhelmed Medea to the edge. Thinking he's about to win, Pearl raises his wooden sword high. Leave your finger and get out of the Count's estate. At least he thought Medea would be beaten until she coughed blood, then collapse on the ground motionless. Can only say Pearl's imagination ran too wild, but reality is that Medea withstands the attack for the first time, and with one critical strike she knocks Pearl outside the circle. Finally, Pearl is knocked to the ground. Medea wipes the wooden sword with her handkerchief and kindly reminds Pearl, I told you not to talk big beforehand. Losing like this, isn't it embarrassing? Pearl is utterly humiliated. Knocked to the ground, Pearl still doesn't understand why his undefeated self lost to the seemingly delicate Duke's daughter before him. Medea looks down at him, saying she deliberately controlled her strength to create this illusion for Pearl, all for the moment of final reversal. As long as Pearl chose to grab the sword, he would lose his balance and fall. The experienced Pearl realizes Medea must be lying. Her facial expressions, movements, even the dripping sweat seem fake. She still looks so effortlessly composed. Medea just smiles without speaking, waiting for Pearl to concede. Pearl also knows that fighting this woman 100 times would mean 100 losses. Stubborn Pearl insists on fulfilling the wager. He picks up the sword himself and stabs his right eye. Medea is truly shocked. They just fought with wooden swords. Where did he pull out an iron sword to stab his own eye? So Medea gives Pearl her first order, change his stubborn temperament. As for the injured eye, perhaps she can ask Psyche to help heal it. Returning to the Duke's estate, Medea sees Helio with tears in his eyes. He doesn't understand how his beloved could be so seriously injured. He really doesn't know if that cardinal is worth Medea spending so much effort on. Medea says he must be hiding other identities, which is why she went to such trouble to approach him. Helio asks if that person is called Pearl. Medea says, do you know him? Helio knows Pearl all too well, but he doesn't want to mention battlefield matters in front of Medea. So he says, never seen seen him. Thinking of this, Helio asks if that person will also accompany the lady in the future. If so, please let me be closer to you. But Medea says Helio is too timid. Helio doesn't care about that. He's intoxicated with physical intimacy with Medea. Pearl returns to the temple and quickly bandages his eye. A moment of bravado, now excruciating pain. Even the guards sigh. You're going out when you're in pain? You're really too tough. But Pearl says he needs to continue investigating Medea's capabilities. He especially wants to know what lies at the end of the path Medea is planning. Soon, dressed up, Medea goes out to meet Pearl at the agreed time. But Pearl is only busy showing off with his one-eyed look. Seeing Medea shyly standing by the roadside, Pearl pulls Medea over. He loudly says goodbye to friends, saying he's going on a date. This heartthrob quality of greeting people 10 times per step makes Medea quite envious. One day she'll also be one with the people. But as they walk, they encounter more of Pearl's friends. With her veil removed, Medea looks noble and beautiful, but the people have already accepted the crown prince's secret slander of Medea. So Pearl's friends detest Medea. They even tell Pearl to quickly leave the vicious woman standing beside him. Pearl says he knows why everyone reacts this way. Seeing her dark history about to be revealed by this big mouth, Medea quickly pulls him away. But the careless Pearl shows no mercy. He asks if Medea is begging him. Medea turns it around, deliberately pulling Pearl's arm affectionately. Darling, didn't you just say you wanted to be alone with me? This day, the butler comes to find Betty, who's still recovering from injuries. He helplessly shares his thoughts with Betty. That day, Lady Medea approached the butler. She said she agrees to let the butler continue following her father's orders, investigating or monitoring her as her father instructs. She'll give the butler space to choose. As for the butler previously passing messages to the Duke for other nobles, she can let bygones be bygones. But if he wants to join forces with her, he must agree to 2 requests. The butler pauses and continues. First, take care of yourself. Second, don't passively accept the Duke's conduct. Hearing this, Betty is moved to tears. Lady Medea cares about them so much, yet they didn't know. So the butler and Betty decide to protect the wonderful Lady Medea with their lives. On Medea's side, she has already reported the old Duke to the royal family. She hopes they'll thoroughly investigate the Duke's estate to completely overthrow the old Duke's tyranny. The Crown Prince looks at this case and feels somewhat troubled. After all, there are far too many suspicious points. The Duke's human trafficking is so extensive. A case of this magnitude will surely weigh on one's conscience. But he feels that Medea reporting her own family must have some benefit. The Crown Prince, who never acts without benefit, decides to reject this trial first, then take the opportunity to threaten Medea. Pearl receives Medea's order. The trial will definitely take place within 2 weeks. But he must go to where Medea's brother is to obtain the evidence needed for the trial. Though Pearl, skilled at traveling, voices reluctance, he wastes no time finding Medea's brother. According to Medea, her brother looks exactly like her. Pearl soon arrives at the seaside, wanting to chat with Medea's brother. But the moment Medea's brother turns around, Pearl is truly dazzled. How can someone be even more handsome than him? Medea's brother, after confirming Pearl is the person his sister sent, generously wants to immediately discuss the evidence with Pearl. 3 days have passed. Medea speculates that Pearl has already met her brother. Betty's injuries have fully healed. Her vicious-minded father has also started investigating her. Sure enough, the cunning Duke raises suspicions about the meal Medea has prepared for him. He even questions the butler about whether Medea has been acting strangely. The butler explains that she was worried drinking on an empty stomach might harm him, so she asks the kitchen to prepare richer dishes. The Duke orders the butler to prepare his meals separately from now on. The butler humbly complies, but the Duke quickly realizes this isn't enough. If Medea notices he hasn't touched her food, she'll simply find another way to come after him, so the poor butler is forced to step in, eating every single dish Medea prepares for the Duke. Meanwhile, poor Psyche has been bedridden for 3 days. She keeps hallucinating her former lover lying beside her. Her feelings for the Crown Prince are a tangle of love and hatred, so even when the figure beside her is nothing but a phantom, she still can't bring herself to reach out and strangle him. Yet the very man haunting her thoughts has just sent Medea an invitation. It reads that, in light of the malicious rumors circulating through the empire, the royal family wishes to comfort Lady Medea, and formally invites her to the imperial palace. Since the invitation comes directly from the Crown Prince, public opinion among the nobility shifts back in Medea's favor. Whether that's a blessing or a curse remains to be seen. Her ladies in waiting bustle about, packing her things and urging her to pick a gown for the occasion. 3 years ago, when she used to meet with the Crown Prince, she had followed her mother's instructions, dressed in the blue gown he loved, paired with sapphires. That embarrassing chapter of her past makes her cringe. So this time, she chooses no gown at all. She intends to treat this visit as official business, the first order of duty for a young duke. Medea dresses in a sharp military-style uniform and steps into the carriage, bound for the imperial palace. After all, today's agenda is the rejected trial. It has been a long time since Medea last set foot in the palace. She finds it both familiar and different, somehow more dazzling than she remembers, yet nothing like what she feels walking out of it. Soon, Medea notices the palace maid seems to be leading her the wrong way. The maid explains that the Crown Prince finds the weather delightful today and wishes to invite Medea on a lake excursion. Speak of the devil. The Crown Prince appears in the distance, dressed in an exquisite robe, walking toward her with unhurried ease. With warm enthusiasm, he extends his hand and invites her aboard. Medea glances around, wary of gossip, but takes his hand anyway. What she doesn't realize is that she has just stepped onto a trap, not a pleasure boat. The Crown Prince asks why she's dressed so unusually today. Medea replies simply that she chose attire suited to the occasion. He laughs softly and says she looks striking. The boat drifts slowly toward the center of the lake. Back at the estate, the spy nanny rushes to Psyche and tells her about the Crown Prince's lake excursion with Medea. Psyche is so startled she pricks her finger, and, in her weakened state, faints on the spot. On the lake, the Crown Prince makes small talk and teases that Medea hasn't changed one bit. The same pale skin, the same graceful composure, the same unreadable expression. Nothing like a noble woman on the verge of ruin. To Medea, it sounds like a fly buzzing in her ear. She truly cannot understand why he insists on all this small talk, instead of getting straight to the point about the trial. So she brings it up herself. I didn't expect you to reject my trial, but consolidating your grip over the nobility during your regency, surely that would only strengthen your hold on the throne. The Crown Prince smiles, as cunning as ever. He tilts her chin up and makes himself perfectly clear he'll take the case, but every ounce of credit will belong to him. As for compensation, he wonders if she'd be interested in becoming Crown Princess. Psyche, even from afar, senses the danger. She knows firsthand. Back when she was inside Medea's body, the Crown Prince had forced a kiss on her. If he gets another chance to be alone with Medea, there's no telling what he might do. And Psyche is exactly right. Right now, the Crown Prince has Medea pinned and forces a kiss on her. Resistance means desire. Apparently, that's how the scumbag Crown Prince sees it. Medea is baffled. Why would he kiss her with no certainty of her feelings? The kiss is barely ended, saliva still lingering between them, when a flash of memory hits her. Back when Psyche was still inside her body, the Crown Prince had broken into the Duke's estate in the dead of night and forced a kiss on what was still Psyche in her body. Psyche hadn't pushed him away. She had accepted the kiss, reluctantly, so the Crown Prince had assumed Medea had fallen for him. Now that Medea knows the whole story, she's furious enough to tear him apart. But reason prevails. She abruptly pulls him into an embrace, cutting off whatever he plans to do next. The Crown Prince gently pats her back, convinced she's simply flustered. Medea speaks against his shoulder. I truly cannot understand you, Your Highness. You already have a betrothed Crown Princess. I attended that very engagement ceremony myself. She says this deliberately, to use Psyche's status as the betrothed Crown Princess as moral ammunition against him. The scumbag Crown Prince twirls a strand of her hair. An engagement isn't a marriage. Medea disagrees. If Your Highness were to abandon me a second time, how could I go on? After all, the reason he had chosen Psyche as his betrothed was that he claimed to have found his true love. How cruel that must have been for the Medea of the past. She only meant to put a performance, but the more she speaks, the more genuinely angry she becomes. The Crown Prince delivers another line worthy of a scoundrel. I stake my heart on it. I will make you my Crown Princess. Seeing him perform so convincingly, Medea decides she owes him an equally dramatic response. So Medea swears in turn, staking her own heart, calling on divine witness, that she will become Crown Princess. But in her heart, she thinks, just you wait. Betrayal is coming for you. The moment Medea returns to the Duke's estate, she is sick to her stomach. From the lingering taste of that snake of a Crown Prince, she can conclude with certainty he had garlic for breakfast. But there's still a performance to put on together with Psyche. Only then will the oblivious Crown Prince fall neatly into the trap Medea has so carefully laid. She sends Psyche a letter in advance, then walks straight up to the Count's estate. In front of the spy servants, Psyche plays the part of a delicate flower being crushed underfoot. But the moment the servants are dismissed, she can barely wait to fling herself into Medea's arms. Medea stops her. Walls have ears. The servants the Crown Prince has bought may well be listening at that very moment. The goal of this conversation is simple. Make the spies believe Medea is bullying Psyche. Psyche kneels on the floor and apologizes to Medea. For that night she had kissed the Crown Prince using Medea's lips, without permission. Medea tells her there is no need to apologize. She understands how impossible the situation was. Psyche is moved to tears, fighting every urge to throw her arms around Medea. Medea lays out a new plan. Psyche must master the power that has recently awakened within her. That way, when Psyche finds herself in danger, Medea can perform the soul swap in time and help Psyche's body escape. Psyche watches her idol calmly speak of protecting her, and her cheeks flush without her realizing it. She promises Medea she will practice every day. Now that the meeting is over, Medea and Psyche must put on a show, one that looks like a confrontation. The servants of the Count's estate burst through the door and find Psyche's face visibly swollen. They rail at Medea for her cruelty. The spy nanny starts to say that once Psyche becomes the true Crown Princess, before she can finish, Psyche delivers a masterclass in acting. She covers her face and bursts into tears. Lady Medea asked me how long I plan to hide behind His Highness, and said it's impressive I've lasted this long. The spy nanny pulls Psyche into her arms, urging her to forget such a painful exchange. Medea turns away and gives Psyche a quick wink. Well done. Shortly after, Medea pays a casual visit to an intelligence broker. The Crown Prince's shadow, guards, tailing her, are desperate to know what she purchased. They offer 10 times the price to find out. Money talks. The broker reveals that Medea came to find out who knew about the Duke's family filing for the special trial. When the Crown Prince hears the report, he assumes Medea has understood his hint. Always the schemer, he decides to help her eliminate the loose ends for good. He orders the intelligence bureau burned to the ground. That night, the fire rages out of control. 7 buildings are reduced to ash. No one survives. Medea doesn't know how it came to this. She grieves for the innocent lives lost, but there is nothing she can do. The next move is already in motion. Medea will unleash a bloodbath across the empire. The ruthless Crown Prince dresses at his leisure, listening to his men report back. He orders them to confirm there are no survivors. What he doesn't expect, however, is that Marquis Helene Eyre, the hidden hand behind the intelligence bureau, is devastated. It was his family's most profitable operation. Now, aside from the records he had hidden away, everything is gone. The sight of Medea's name stirs his rage. He calls a private meeting, with one goal: to destroy her. Marquise Helene Eyre gathers the nobles who share his treasonous ambitions and tells them they have endured long enough. They have been biding their time, waiting for the right moment. Now, he has come across a crucial piece of information. Medea had uncovered something vital at the intelligence bureau, then burned everyone inside to bury it. She must be hiding something significant. Therefore, Marquise Helene Eyre rallies them all to fan the flames of the special trial Medea has initiated. Their first target, the servants who once worked at the Duke's estate. Thanks to Medea's letters of recommendation, those servants have scattered into various noble households. But if any of them are spies planted appointed by Medea, that would be disastrous. So the servants are quickly forced out, one by one, under various pretexts. Some barely escape with their lives. Take John, Oliver, and Marion at the Marquise's estate, sent out on a supposed errand, but in truth, the Marquise has sent assassins to kill them. Oliver, still grumbling about being pushed around by senior staff, is the first to be shot. The assassins note flatly that blood has splattered the carriage. 2 targets remain, just as the contract specified. John and Marion have no idea what that means, but they know they need to run. They flee to the edge of a cliff, but escape still seems impossible. Marion sees blood and thinks she is already dead. At the critical moment, Helio arrives, like a hero charging onto the scene. He cuts down the assassins and saves both John and Marion. On the carriage ride to the safe house, Marion asks Helio why he came to their rescue. The butler beside him answers simply, on Lady Medea's orders. When they arrive, they find the safe house already filled with servants who had once betrayed Medea, the very ones who had clamored to leave her service. Helio explains that the house is in the outskirts of the city. For now, they are safe from pursuit. Everyone is overwhelmed with emotion. After everything they did, betraying her, Medea still looked out for them. Helio relays her message. Rest here and recover. When you are ready, you are welcome to return to the Duke's estate. All at once, every voice in the room cries out, loyal to Lady Medea for life. The sight moves Helio deeply, but he worries that Medea will grieve over the servants who have already died or gone missing. Medea, however, tells him he's overthinking it. Everything is going according to plan. Those servants were deliberately placed by Medea inside the noble household she intends to bring down through the trial. She just wonders whether Psyche, upon learning the truth, will be furious. Something like, how could you, Lady Medea? They only wanted to survive. Medea thinks to herself that kind of compassion is a luxury only someone like Psyche can afford. Regardless, the first part of the plan is complete. Securing the servants within the city, they will serve as leverage against the vicious old Duke. Now, with the support of Cardinal Pearl, the Crown Prince will not move against Psyche for the time being. The final piece of the puzzle is her brother, the one who holds the key. If he acts as she hopes, everything will fall into place. In truth, Medea need not worry about that at all. What she doesn't know is that her brother destined cherishes her as the most important person in his world. He even calls her by her nickname, Medi, in front of a near stranger like Pearl. Yet for all his devotion, destined is heartbroken. He writes to her regularly, but Medea never writes back unless it's for official matters. Pearl studies this gentleman before him and finds him utterly unlike the cold-blooded Medea. Were it not for the striking resemblance they share, Pearl might have thought destined was switched at birth. Medea splashes water on her face. Lately, she feels the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. Yet the small beauties of this world keep driving her forward, quietly and without complaint. One day, the Crown Prince calls a meeting of the nobility. To everyone's surprise, Marquis Helene Eyre opens his mouth and says something outrageous. As nobles, we are expected to uphold the example set by the royal family. Those who fail to do so should have their power stripped and face public condemnation. Marquis Helene Eyre intends this as a jab at the old Duke, but the Crown Prince takes it personally. His fury ignites. Helene Eyre, exactly who are you implying? Marquis Helene Eyre acts as if he has no idea what the fuss is about. He responds with an arrogant "oh" and says His Highness must be mistaken. The Crown Prince forces his anger down. Then what exactly is your point? Marquis Helene Eyre says he simply hopes for a private audience with His Highness. The Crown Prince calls the meeting to a close. Then he makes something unmistakably clear to Marquis Helene Eyre. This is a warning. If he continues targeting the Duke's family, the Crown Prince will have his shadow guards tear that mouth of his apart. The sun is warm and golden. Medea walks beneath her parasol beside the old Duke, admiring the flowers. Then she speaks, almost casually. If you had to choose between me and the Duke's family, you would choose the family, wouldn't you, father? The old Duke says she is absolutely right. I have always valued the honor of this house above all else, above my own family. Medea smiles. Then I have a responsibility to carry on your will. Marquis Helene Eyre returns home, seething at the humiliation he just endured. At that moment, Count Got, once the old Duke's mistress, pays him a deliberate visit, and together they scheme to bring down Medea's family. Count Got twists her lips into a smirk and says she knows just how to pour oil on the fire. Medea's reputation is already in the gutter. Adding a few more scandals won't raise any eyebrows. People have grown numb to stories about her at this point. So if a rumor spreads that her family has been illegally extracting taxes under the royal family's watch, no one will find it strange. If the same accusation were aimed at Psyche, people would be suspicious, but pin it on Medea, and everyone will believe it. Word of mouth will do the rest, and soon it will spread to every corner of the empire. Once the storm rises, the royal family will no longer shield her. Even the Crown Prince will read the room and step back, and Count Got and Marquise Helene Eyre need only stay hidden behind their shield and watch it all unfold. Sure enough, Marquise Helene Eyre follows Count Got's rotten advice. What he doesn't expect is that it sends the Crown Prince into a rage. He had already warned Marquise Helene Eyre to stay his hand. If the man insists on walking to his own grave, the Crown Prince is happy to oblige. A royal proclamation is posted, announcing a special trial to be held by the royal family. The people agree, after everything these nobles have done, death is the only fitting punishment. Marquise Helene Eyre lurks in the crowd, watching the spectacle, until he finds his own family's name on the list. The shock hits him like a blow. The royal knight order moves swiftly. Marquise Helene Eyre is seized and taken into custody, a plan that backfires spectacularly. The old Duke hears the news and storms to find Medea, and strikes her hard across the face, because the final line of the proclamation states that his own daughter has reported them, putting her own family among the 6 noble families named for trial. The slap lands with brutal force, leaving Medea's face feeling like it might split open. Pain floods her senses. The taste of blood rises on her tongue. Every sensation speaks to the old Duke's brutality. Medea had prepared herself for this, but preparation doesn't make it hurt less. Time to perform. Medea feigns ignorance, demanding to know why he has struck her. Every servant in the room freezes in in horror. The old duke sneers. My daughter certainly has a way with words. Let's see how long you can keep up this act. Medea looks at him as if he has lost his mind. Father, what rumor has deceived you into raising your hand against me? The old duke hurls a stool against the glass in fury. Medea presses on. If I had truly reported you, why would I still be standing here? You have fallen for the royal family scheme. They despise our house. They are using me to come after you. Then Medea plays her final card. If Lady Medea appears at the trial covered in injuries, what will people think? The old duke knows she is deflecting, but she isn't wrong. He cannot afford more whispers. Medea adds quietly that she is in pain. Not just her face, but deep within. The exasperated duke orders her wounds to be treated. When he learns the bruising on her face will take a full month to heal, he orders her to apply ice and stay in her room. When the day of the trial comes, she is to cover the bruise with powder. At dinner, the butler overhears the staff murmuring among themselves. They say Lady Medea hasn't eaten a single bite. Only the doctor has been allowed in to apply medicine. The old duke sends the butler in to check on her. He then pauses, remembering that he had ordered the butler to eat in his place, out of fear that Medea had poisoned his food. 10 days had passed with no ill effects. He begins to wonder, perhaps he has been wrong to suspect her. Perhaps she too is a pawn in someone else's scheme. He thinks back. A long time ago, there had been moments of peace between them. The old duke's cold, hardened heart begins, just barely, to soften. Then the butler doubles over in a violent coughing fit and spits up a mouthful of dark blood. The doctor examines him and confirms he has been poisoned. The old duke breaks into a cold sweat. He has been completely deceived by his own daughter. In his fury, he finally sees what she truly is, a devil. Then let her be eliminated, once and for all. As for the half-dead butler before him, the old duke considers for a long moment, and decides to send this man who served him for 20 years to his death. A dead butler is far more useful to him than a living one. In the dead of night, the butler, who should have been dead, opens his eyes. He realizes now, the duke hadn't been upset to see him collapse. It was his daughter's defiance that had sent him into a rage. That means he, this man who gave 20 years of his life, means nothing to the duke at all. All those years, and he had been loyal to the wrong master. The old duke decides Medea will die the same way. He releases her from confinement, and sets a lavish table before her, a last supper, though she doesn't know it yet. But Medea spears a piece of egg on her fork and simply does not eat it. The old duke watches, inwardly burning with impatience. Medea notices her father's fingers begin to tap, a sign he is on the verge of losing his temper. So she does exactly what he hopes, and swallows the food. Sure enough, the poison takes hold. Medea collapses to the floor. The last time this happened was over a decade ago. Back then, Deswin was still the young heir. He had paced and stomped in desperation, watching his little sister writhe in pain. The butler had warned him to leave before she woke up. If the duke found out he had been there, the whip would find his back again. Deswin had refused. How could I leave? She was poisoned because of me. The butler had replied that Lady Medea was connected to the royal family. Any further incident would bring trouble upon the crown and the house. Deswin had snapped at him for saying something so disrespectful, and said he could never accept this family's philosophy of sacrifice. He had wondered aloud whether he was even fit to inherit a house whose values were so different from his own. Those words had woken Medea. She had begged Deswin to tell their father she would take his place as heir. What Deswin never imagined was that she had meant every word. She had truly prepared herself to become the young duke, and had proven herself far more capable than he ever could be. Deswin stares at Cardinal Pearl standing before him and marvels. How did his sister build connections this vast, and bend a man of this standing to her cause? Once Deswin understands why Pearl has come, he produces a thick, meticulously organized stack of documents and places it in Pearl's hands. Pearl stares at what he is holding, unable to believe it. He had come prepared to haul the records away by carriage, yet Deswin had already sorted everything on his sister's behalf. It is extraordinary. One man had investigated an entire web of illegal wartime dealings alone. Even Pearl, no judge himself, can see how airtight this evidence is. Pearl extends an invitation to Deswin. Come back to the capital with me tomorrow. But Deswin gently declines. Before leaving, Pearl tells him to think it over. Deswin then takes out a locket. Inside is a portrait of Medea. He recalls the words she said when he left home, and the ache in his chest is impossible to ignore. On a stormy night, thunder rolling overhead, the old duke has Medea bound and thrown into a carriage. He says he is simply letting her rest. Then, after announcing that Medea has met with misfortune, he orders a citywide search for his missing daughter. The cry rings out. The crown prince arrives. The old duke's composure shatters instantly. He assumes the crown prince has come to drag him in for questioning, and knows he has far too many weak spots to escape unscathed. But the crown prince tells him to relax. He is here for Medea. The old duke's panic only deepens. He has just had her dumped in the wilderness to fend for herself. So he lies to the crown prince, claiming Medea is unwell and cannot receive visitors. At that moment, a maid drops to her knees before the crown prince. Your Highness, forgive my insolence. Punish me as you see fit. But the duke locked Lady Medea in her room for days without food. That is why she fell ill. And rather than reflect on what he had done, the duke took his anger out on Lady Medea, and on all of us. More and more people around her begin to weep. The crown prince fixes the old duke with a cold stare. Is what this servant says true? Without waiting for an answer, the crown prince shoves him underfoot and humiliates him thoroughly, then orders the entire duke's estate searched. The old duke tries to defend himself, revealing that Medea had poisoned him. He calls on the attending doctor to back him up, only for the doctor to turn against him. The doctor states that the duke is in perfect health. There has never been any sign of poisoning. The night order reports back swiftly. Medea is nowhere to be found in the entire estate. The crown prince immediately senses disaster. A public announcement goes out at once. The informant of the upcoming special trial, Lady Medea, has gone missing. This is unmistakably an act of retaliation and an attempt to destroy evidence. Therefore, all 6 noble families are charged and detained in the underground prison beneath the imperial palace. Meanwhile, the doctor who just turned against the duke appears at a suburban house, chatting with the ever-devoted Helio. The doctor advises Helio to get some rest. He looks like he hasn't slept in days. Helio says he can't stop worrying about Medea. He knows her disappearance is staged, but he can't help it. Then the sound of hooves approaches from outside. It's Medea, riding in on horseback, quick, dragging the butler behind her. She has made it to the suburban house on sheer willpower alone. The moment she arrives, she collapses into Helio's arms. She is on the verge of death once again. Helio knows that acting without her permission may earn him a furious scolding once she wakes. Medea never wants Psyche to see her weak, but Helio cannot bear to watch her die before her time. Not again. So in the dead of night, he goes to Psyche, drops to his knees, and begs her to save Medea. Kind-hearted Psyche agrees. She will perform the soul swap with Medea and use her divinity to purge the remaining poison. Helio is too moved to speak. Psyche's cheeks flush. She is going to swap souls with her idol once again, so she changes into her most treasured nightgown, hoping Medea will like it. But stopping her own heart with divinity is excruciating. Psyche trembles uncontrollably, afraid the pain will overwhelm her before the swap is complete. Then an assassin solves that problem for her. At some point, Psyche had left a window unlatched. An assassin sent specifically to kill her slips inside. With one sharp thrust, Psyche's heart is pierced. Anyone else would have dropped dead on the spot. But Psyche, blessed by divinity, completes the soul swap with Medea seamlessly. When she opens her eyes, the face staring back from the mirror is Medea's. Medea, now in Psyche's body, stares coldly at the assassin before her, wondering if the crown prince sent him. But it hardly matters. Medea executes a single leg sweep, and the assassin is pinned to the floor, helpless. Psyche accidentally rolls off the bed and lands on the floor. Thankfully, Helio comes in and helps her back onto the bed. Once again, he identifies in an instant that the one in Lady Medea's body is Psyche. Psyche ignores the pain and urgently tells him, before she triggered the soul swap, someone had climbed through her bedroom window and stabbed her through the heart. So Medea is in danger right now. But dawn is nearly here. The servants of the Count's estate are about to begin their surveillance of Psyche again. Going to her rescue now would only make things worse. All they can do is trust that the formidable Medea will defeat the assassin and survive on her own. There is one more thing. The Crown Prince had once hinted to Psyche that she would be dead within 100 days, and Medea's disappearance has sent the Crown Prince tearing through every corner of the empire. The servants at the Duke's estate must be moved at once. Fortunately, Helio had moved everyone out before the Crown Prince arrived. But the Crown Prince moves fast. He locates where Lady Medea is staying by early morning. He sees Medea's body and pulls her into his arms without hesitation, as if he wants to press her into himself. But this deceptive tenderness no longer fools the soul of Psyche. Though Psyche has no choice but to return to the palace with him, she will never place another hope in him again. Early that morning, the servants of the Count's estate discover something alarming. A strange man dead in their flower bed. His neck is broken. He appears to have fallen from a great height. They look up. Directly above is Lady Medea's bedroom. Realizing what this means, the servants decide to bury the body and destroy the evidence. Medea steps out, fully dressed, pretending to enjoy the morning air. She asks the servants what they are all gathered around. The servants fumble over themselves. A bird died. We were about to bury it. You really shouldn't look, my lady. It's quite a gory sight. From the shadows, a pearl rolls out from between the dead man's lips with a soft clatter. And that detail says everything. The formidable Medea had killed the Crown Prince's assassin herself and tossed the body into the flower bed on purpose. Watching the Crown Prince fawn over Medea's body, Psyche feels nothing but disgust, not heartbreak. The carriage carries the Crown Prince and Psyche to the imperial palace. Psyche sees the lavish chamber the Crown Prince has prepared for Medea, so extravagant it almost hurts to look at. While the Crown Prince steps away to receive a guest, quick-thinking Psyche seizes a sharp quill pen, and the moment the footsteps fade, she drives it into herself, triggering the soul swap with Medea. Back at the Count's estate, Medea runs into the Crown Prince's aide, who has come to handle the aftermath. Before the assassination attempt, the Crown Prince had hidden a sacred relic pearl inside the assassin's molar, a failsafe. If the plan unraveled, the assassin was to end his own life. But Medea had already spotted the trap. Ever so graciously, she offered her services free of charge, and pulled out that rotten tooth on the spot. No anesthetic on hand, of course. The poor man died from the pain. The aide quickly ushers Medea upstairs, using her thin clothing as an excuse to get her out of the way. Medea obliges without protest, but while the freckled maid attends to Medea's bath, she notices a deep red mark spreading across Medea's chest. Medea knows the freckled maid has learned her lesson. She won't breathe a word. So once she receives a clear promise of silence, Medea rewards her with a jeweled brooch. The freckled maid swears to keep quiet. Then Medea returns to her own body and finds Psyche's note waiting on the page, a promise that she will fight, with everything she has, against those who want Medea dead. Medea thinks to herself, Psyche has truly grown. But there is still one more thing to handle, making sure Count Got, the old Duke's mistress, stays in line. Got swears she will follow the plan, and Medea has promised to spare her life in return. But the Crown Prince lurks behind like a predator waiting to strike. He too pays Got a visit. After their secret meeting, the Crown Prince generously sends Got a meal. Food so vile not even a rat would touch it. He calls it a final kindness for someone about to die. After Psyche returns home, the servants busy themselves arranging a custom gown for her, because the special trial that the entire empire has been waiting for is about to begin. To see the privileged nobles who have oppressed them finally brought to justice by the crown. The whole empire is buzzing like it's a holiday. Wherever you go, the moment three people gather, the topic is always the same, and bets are being placed. Most are betting on Medea, despite her once notorious reputation, but others warn it won't be so easy. The parliamentary faction will surely shower the judges with gold to buy their way out. Who will fall in the end remains to be seen. In just a few days, public opinion of Medea has done a complete 180, and even the nobles are no exception. The reform faction has long stood against the parliamentary nobles Medea is now prosecuting. Their stance in this trial will not only shape the political landscape, it could hand them enormous, real power. Just as the debate among the reformists reaches its peak, Pearl bursts through the doors of their meeting room. He openly declares himself the secretary cardinal, and invites the reform faction to join forces with him to secure victory for Medea's trial. Medea strikes as well, with deliberate, disarming charm. She urges the crown prince to side with the reform faction, dangling a tempting promise before him. If she becomes empress one day, she will grow their power into a full political faction. The Crown Prince finds this proposition very much to his liking. And so, the trial that will be written into history finally begins. Medea arrives in full splendor. As the judge's gavel falls, the charges against the 6 noble families are read aloud, crimes of breathtaking cruelty. First, Medea addresses the rumors she herself had deliberately spread, the claim that she would kill her own father. She states that the true divine oracle reads, "The one closest to the heart of the empire shall bring the empire to ruin." She submits the oracle keeper's testimony as evidence. The crowd stirs immediately, but Medea presses on. The answer, she says, lies within the fabricated oracle itself, who is closest to the heart of the empire, none other than the nobles who surround the imperial palace and hold real power. The monstrous crimes of these 6 families are precisely what will lead the nation to its downfall. The truth is, these nobles fabricated the oracle, then attempted to have her kidnapped. Here Medea pauses to praise the Crown Prince. Had he not saved her, she would surely have been killed. As for the accusation of patricide, it breaks her heart. Medea's performance is nothing short of extraordinary. The entire audience is moved, and even Pearl almost falls for it. But the old duke sees right through his daughter. He shouts that Medea is playing the sympathy card, only to be sharply silenced by the Crown Prince. Then Helio uncharacteristically speaks up against Medea. He asks, "You are the old duke's own daughter. Are you truly so innocent?" Psyche's heart nearly stops. Helio, who has always stood by Medea, why would he say this? The Crown Prince quietly explains it to Psyche. Medea had arranged it all in advance. She had coached Helio to challenge her, to make her defense more credible. She had also given the Crown Prince advance notice that witnesses from the border would be needed. Medea launches into her next performance. "This is too unjust," she cries. "Why must I be punished for crimes my father committed, crimes I knew nothing about?" 2 sentences are all it takes to set the crowd murmuring. "You have all felt this way before," she continues. "When you are starving and you see a feast, you want to eat. When you see priceless jewels, you want to take them. These are human instincts." The words hit too close to home. The crowd goes quiet for a long moment. To break the silence, Psyche jumps to her feet and shouts out in support. Medea seizes the moment and shifts her argument. "Since we have all had such thoughts, since we all desire freedom without restraint, and since that desire alone is enough to draw condemnation, then as those who hold the highest station in the empire," Medea turns and points at the 6 accused. "The reason we stand here to judge these animals is that we possess reason, and the discipline to uphold morality." The Crown Prince cannot help but applaud. By repeatedly saying "we" and "them," Medea has placed herself firmly on the side of the people among the victims. She draws the crowd into her orbit. The power of her carefully crafted words is the key to winning this trial. Then Medea delivers a knockout blow. These criminals have been trafficking human beings. During the war, certain nobles raised the banner of helping the common people, and established temporary monasteries, offering themselves directly to the public. Not only did they comfort the wounded hearts of the people, they also selected 100 promising children each year for advanced education. Parents scrambled desperately to get their children in. They had no idea it was a living hell. As she speaks, Medea produces a document. Out of every 100 children admitted each year, more than 30 simply vanished. For an institution claiming sacred untouchability, that number is deeply suspicious. Beyond inciting kidnapping and human trafficking, there are 26 additional charges against them. On these grounds, Medea formally charges the 6 central noble families. The tribunal falls completely silent. The special trial is designed to move swiftly, so Medea produces her strongest piece of evidence, a handwritten copy of documents submitted to the chief judge, written in what appears to be scribbled imperial script, but actually encoded in a foreign language. The rough meaning, transported inside their bodies, no one will ever suspect. How terribly convenient. No one in the room can believe what they are hearing. These nobles were smuggling goods inside human bodies along the border. Medea asks the accused if they admit to it. Someone immediately shouts, "We do not." But Medea points out the nobles' fingerprints on the document, and she has a border witness ready to testify. As the witness in the black hat gives their account, one of the nobles cracks completely. "If it weren't for us, they would have died in misery anyway," he snarls. "These wretches came willingly, wanting a comfortable life, no different from beggars." The moment those words leave his mouth, the outcome is sealed. The crowd erupts in fury, hurling curses at the nobles. The chief judge calls a recess and announces the verdict will follow shortly. Medea's mind drifts back to childhood. Deswin was being beaten savagely by their father. Little Medea hid in the doorway, watching, unable to understand why. Deswin first met his little sister during their mother's recovery after birth. Their mother told him he had once been this tiny. Deswin could not fathom it. How could something so impossibly small have grown into him? He remembered with perfect clarity how his sister came into the world wrapped in blessings. She looked so much like him, and yet so entirely different. A few years later, little Medea began to speak. She called her brother Dakin as her own special nickname. Deswin was overjoyed. His sister was a genius, he was sure of it, talking so young. So he decided he would call her Medea in return, a name that would be theirs alone for life. The doting Deswin even promised little Medea that when he became the young duke, he would plant a whole courtyard of sage just for her. He kept a diary on her behalf, recording moments like the day his brilliant little sister, in a singing contest at school, beat young Master Bertka, who was 3 years her senior. Deswin thought she was simply extraordinary. Even her progress in sword training was remarkable. But to keep her from being used as a tool by their self-serving parents, Deswin made sure to warn Medea, don't tell their parents she was training with a sword. As the years passed, the old duke noticed how close his 2 children had grown. But he reasoned that as long as Medea did not become Deswin's weakness, it was no great concern. At social gatherings, the talk was all about the marriage proposals pouring in for Deswin. Everyone agreed one had to move fast to secure such a desirable match. But only Medea noticed the blood seeping through Deswin's formal coat from the wounds on his back. She quickly pulled him away from the party before the pain became unbearable. Deswin was astonished by her sharp eye, and moved to see Medea on the verge of tears, aching for him. Clever Medea had him tilt his head back back to look at the Milky Way, letting him forget just for a moment all his troubles. When she mentioned her upcoming audience with the Empress at the palace, Deswin felt a fresh surge of pride. What child was summoned by the royal family so often? He wished with all his heart that Medi's future would shine as bright as the stars above. But that same thought sent a chill through him. Medi was too clever. In the Duke's household, that kind of brilliance was deadly. The old Duke told young Medea, "Use your talents to become someone great." In truth, he was using his clever daughter as a piece on his own chessboard. Deswin envied Helios' warm and peaceful family. In those days, Helios' parents were still alive. The Marchioness would lovingly guide her son to hold both their hands, careful not to trip. Deswin would wonder, if he and Medi had been born into a family like that, would they have been this happy too? One day, the two siblings attended a banquet together. In the carriage, Deswin straightened Medea's cravat and brooch. He realized his little sister had truly grown up. The doting brother ruffled her hair and told her she still looked like a little child to him. Just then, the carriage accidentally struck a wild rabbit. Kind-hearted Deswin wanted to stop and bury it, but Medea argued with him. Why bother burying a rabbit? Arriving on time mattered far more than a dead rabbit. Medea thought she was being perfectly sensible, but Deswin did not praise her as she expected. Instead, he told her plainly, "The rabbit died because of us. No banquet is worth more than a life." Medea could not understand him. That gathering was the very foundation of Deswin's path to becoming the young Duke. And so, for the first time, a crack appeared in their bond. As Medea grew older, she became increasingly impatient with her brother. She would even snap at Deswin to get out of her way. When he invited her to review the account books with him, she ignored him entirely. Worried, Deswin eventually found out that Medea had been attending royal lessons, though he could not understand why they were held in their father's study. Medea's brilliance began to show. She brought her father scheme after scheme, and the old Duke was deeply pleased. But Medea began to realize something was wrong. Every strategy her father presented to the royal family had come from her own mind, yet only the old Duke received the praise. Her contributions were erased entirely. Deswin could not understand how two siblings once so close had come to this, and he felt more and more that he could not measure up to his brilliant sister. When he submitted a report to their father, the old Duke told him Medea had already completed it. What followed was a torrent of criticism. Not long after, the war broke out across the empire. The old Duke told Deswin he would rather see his son die on the battlefield than crawl home in disgrace. Medea did not stop her brother as he left for war. She could not even bring herself to meet his eyes at the farewell, but all Deswin could think about was fighting hard enough to one day free Medi from the prison that was the Duke's estate. And yet Medea had been hating him all along. That broke Deswin's heart. Then came the day the crown prince broke off the engagement with Medea. Deswin tried to comfort her. He promised to help find her a worthy husband. Medea shot back that she had no desire to marry at all. Then the old Duke gave Deswin the head of house ring. He instructed Deswin, now 25, to go to the underground archive beneath the estate and put every document there in order. The final test before Deswin could become the new Duke. Deswin obeyed and descended into the underground archive, that vault of the family's history. What he found there was beyond anything he could have imagined. Permit applications for the monasteries, ranking charts dividing human beings into tiers, slave certificates. Every last document was the filth on which the Duke's estate had been built. This was the final test of becoming the head of house. Deswin felt as though his entire body was soaked in the blood of those who had died. As he dug deeper, he found that the family had built everything on crime. Every meal he had eaten, every coat he had worn, every step he had taken. All of it paid for with other people's lives. After that, Deswin was never the same. He grew quiet, withdrawn, carrying a weight no one could see. Medea overheard the maids whispering, and went to check on her brother, who was trapped in nightmares. "Are you running away?" she demanded. "You are full of tricks. You said you would reflect, said so many things, and did nothing. So what exactly is the point?" Deswin could not find the words. He desperately wanted to take Medi and run. Everything in that house made him sick. Medea, knowing nothing, pressed on with her mockery. "Why didn't you leave before the inheritance ceremony? It wasn't long ago." Deswin could bear it no longer. He dropped to his knees and begged her to stop. How could he tell Medi that this family had been built on blood, raised on the bones of countless victims? He could have found the strength to face all of it, but he was terrified Medi would shrug it off as if it meant nothing. He couldn't bring himself to tear away the veil. Medea didn't push him further. She just shouted, "You will keep running and hiding, doing exactly as you please, and regret it for the rest of your life." She was right. Deswin did run. He lived exactly that life. But he had one conviction: if he hid the evidence in the archive that only the head of house could enter, then one day Medi would take her place as the head of house and find what he had left behind. So he placed a sprig of sage beside the hidden documents. A signal meant only for her, a silent act of help. The trial now enters its final stage. The documents are to be soaked in holy water and then set alight. A sacred oath before the divine, a declaration of truth and judgment. But when one of the documents is set aflame, it actually burns. Medea's stomach drops. She looks back and finds Marquise Helene Eyre staring directly at her. That old snake has tampered with the process. But Medea has come too far. She will not surrender at the moment of victory. The tribunal descends into chaos. Even the crowd that had gathered to watch the execution stops in its tracks. Just as everyone prepares to re-examine the documents, an unremarkable priest shouts out that Lady Duke's evidence is forged. Why would you hand them back to her? What is the point of this ritual if she controls the documents? The reason this priest acts is that Marquise Helene Eyre had threatened him before the trial. "You want me to tamper with Lady Duke's evidence?" Marquise Helene Eyre gave a sincere nod. The priest tried to talk him out of it. "Wake up, you're already at death's door and still stirring trouble." But Marquise Helene Eyre told the priest if he refused to help, then on the road to the Grand Temple for sentencing. Every dirty secret the priest had ever buried would be exposed. If one goes down, both go down. The threat works instantly, and Marquise Helene Eyre has already begun listing the priest's sins, starting with the embezzled charitable donations. Marquise Helene Eyre believes she has played the smarter move. What she cannot foresee is this: the the crown prince will step forward and speak for Medea. Even without the temple's consent, the royal family holds the authority to permit a retrial. Marquis Helene Eyre shouts that Lady Duke is trying to deceive the royal family, demanding Medea prove her own innocence. Medea smiles. I am willing, she says. In fact, this is quite simple to resolve. Since the issue arose when lighting the documents, she says, simply use a different document to test the flame. Medea points to an oath document. If there is any document in this tribunal that should never burn, she says, it would be the chief judge's oath document, for there is no reason anyone would ever forge one. With that, Medea dips it into the holy water and lights it. The flames rise high, exposing just how ridiculous the priest's objection truly was. Medea continues, if whoever prepared the holy water had mixed in salt powder, then it would catch fire, and that would explain everything. The crown prince chimes in perfect harmony. To tamper with sacred holy water is a profound act of sacrilege. Medea notes that this priest, still standing with the criminals, looks very suspicious indeed. It is time to wake up, she says. Marquis Helene Eyre is dispatched with one swift cut. Next is the old duke. In his heart he does not want to die, yet he hurls abuse at Medea. I should never have brought you into this world, Medea replies with quiet composure. What a shame, I was going to ask his highness to spare you, if you apologize to me. The old duke had always said that no one in the family would ever bow their head, so even when the long overdue apology finally comes, it cannot save him from his sentence. Medea turns away, the blade falls swiftly, and with it the chapter of bitterness finally closes. The crowd raises their fists, justice at last. Deswin, who had ridden hard to arrive in time, witnesses it all. What becomes of the duke's estate now? No one knows yet. The crowd watching the execution calls Medea an ungrateful wretch. At this pivotal moment, Medea faces the people of the empire and offers an apology. As the new head of house, she pledges to donate every asset of the duke's estate to the royal family and the grand temple to be returned to the people as an offering to the souls who were lost. The crown prince finds this most satisfying. He knows very well just how much the duke's estate is worth, and this will fill the imperial treasury considerably. Medea also promises to locate the survivors and their families and ensure they are compensated. She will hunt down those who remain in hiding and bring them to justice, and she will stand as a guardian of the empire so this tragedy will never happen again. Through these promises, Medea wants to show Deswin everything he had ever hoped she would be, she has become. A cycle of vengeance has no end. Some sins demand a full stop. In that moment, Deswin steps onto the stage, overcome, and presses his lips to the back of Medea's hand. He tells her she does not need to search for survivors. He had already found every last one of them and made sure they were safe. But none of them knew Deswin was from the duke's estate. Now, he says, it is time to tell the truth. Medea thinks that too takes courage. At that moment, Pearl steps forward. He announces to everyone present, this is the moment the empire's order changes. In truth, Medea becoming head of house alone is not enough to match the crown prince. Compared to the old noble faction, which has already been burned, the royal family poses a far greater threat. That is why Pearl must step forward as a representative, forming a three-way balance of power. This is also why Medea donated everything to the Grand Temple. Building the new reform faction requires both money and reputation. Now they have both. Pearl and the new reform faction will become another weapon in Medea's hands, the trump card she will use to bring down the crown prince. The crowd cheers at the sight of Pearl, but the gossips are already asking, is Pearl here to stand up for his lover Medea? Deswin's face goes blank with shock. Somewhere in the crowd, Helio quietly picks up a small knife. Pearl moves quickly to dispel the rumors. My closeness with Lady Duke, he says, has been in service of one goal, to cut out the corrupt noble rot at its root. He gestures to the new reform faction below, and says he wishes to work alongside those who follow and support him to reform things, step by step, piece by piece. The trial nears its end, but Count Got, just before the execution, shouts for the blade to stop. It seems she has secrets to tell the crown prince. That day, after Medea had visited Got, the crown prince had gone to see her as well. He had brought her a gift, her husband's tongue. Got understood perfectly. Even with Medea as duke, she could not prevail against the royal family. So she chose to follow the crown prince's orders and play her current role, luring out a scapegoat. From the very beginning, Got declares, someone was pulling the strings behind us. The crown prince asks who. Got answers Count Rory, the father of the crown princess. He claimed to have an illegitimate daughter he wanted placed in the palace and needed human trafficking to fund the scheme. The words land like a thunderclap, sending the crowd into uproar. Medea furiously orders Got to be silent, but Got, desperate to bargain for her life, keeps playing along with the crown prince. The crown prince says, is there not a single lie in what you have said? Got replies, I am about to die. Why would I lie? Without missing a beat, the crown prince, the devoted husband, draws his blade and cuts off Got's head. Psyche is so shaken she collapses on the spot. Before losing consciousness, she cries out that her father is not the man they are describing. Is he an angel? Pearl rubs his remaining eye and cannot help but stare. Psyche weeping like a rain-drenched pear blossom. It pierces something right in his chest. The guard assumes the cardinal has taken a liking to the maid standing nearby, but Pearl is quite firm. I mean her, the one next to you. The guard's face drains of color. How can you, with the crown princess, with Psyche at first sight? The night grows deep and still. It is over. But when the sun rises, a new game will begin. As the newly titled duke, Medea finds herself buried in invitations. She knows every eye in the empire is watching her, waiting to see her next move. Wear something too plain, and the trolls will call her a beggar. Wear something too fine, and she will be accused of hollow performance. To avoid the whole lot of nitpickers, Medea declines every invitation except those from the royal family. That handles the immediate problem. But there is still plenty to worry about. Yesterday, the crown prince blindsided Psyche, and now her father has been named the mastermind behind everything. Medea imagines Psyche must be crying endlessly right now. Betty asks her mistress when she plans to arrange meetings with the crown princess and the cardinal. A brilliant idea strikes Medea. She decides to arrange a meeting between these two people, both kind-hearted, both touched by divine favor. She tells Betty to schedule Psyche and Pearl on the same day, but Psyche is not crying as expected. Her father has been poisoned into unconsciousness. The servants claim the Count accidentally pricked himself on a poison needle, but Psyche knows the truth. The Crown Prince's spies poisoned him on command. She has no time for grief. Medea had once told Psyche that whenever things became too much, they could swap souls, and Medea would come and handle everything. But Psyche has decided to stand on her own and face the dangerous reality herself. Medea notices that Psyche has not written back lately. She figures Psyche must be occupied with matters at the Count's estate. Psyche has truly grown. Psyche is now quietly cataloging everything in the household. Who among the servants fills which role? The way everything appears so harmonious on the surface. She can barely believe that these people who appear so kind have been working against her all along. Well then, it is time to strike back. In their eyes, she is nothing but a hopelessly romantic fool. Her sweet, naive, oblivious act has made every single one of them lower their guard. But Psyche, who has now given up on love entirely, has a mind sharpened to razor precision, more than a match for every petty lackey the Crown Prince has planted around her. Meanwhile, the spy nanny has already arranged a scapegoat for the Count's poisoning. She carefully coaches the young boy. Those who help seek revenge will be taken care of. No one holds a fool accountable. Almost every servant in the Count's estate thinks the same way. After all, their young mistress is just a girl completely lost in love. So the spy nanny, along with everyone else the Crown Prince has planted, believes Psyche can be fooled and used at will. Let us handle this one. I hear father collapsed in the hall. How terrifying. Psyche says in a tone of soft, mournful sympathy. She guesses this is exactly the performance they are waiting for. Sure enough, all the servants huddle together to work out how to handle her. Conveniently, a red-headed boy named Lila has just started in the washing yard. A perfect scapegoat. The nanny drags Lila before Psyche to beg forgiveness. The stubborn Lila kneels before her, spine stiff, as Psyche says calmly, "Thank you, nanny." But strangely, Psyche does not punish Lila at all. Instead, she asks him to stay by her side as a helper. Days pass, and Lila is still alive and well. Lila grows anxious. Why hasn't this foolish woman dealt with her yet? Then one day, while out with Psyche, they come across an injured rabbit collapsed by the water's edge. Psyche, in her floor-length gown, spots the wounded creature from afar and wants desperately to help. Lila doesn't understand it at all. She sneers, "How noble of you, my lady. A worthless little rabbit, lucky it ran into someone so kind-hearted." Caught in the rain, Psyche asks quietly, "Does my care mean so little?" Lila, her patience long worn thin by Psyche's gentleness, fires back. "Someone with your princess complex could never understand how I feel. The other day you turned away perfectly good venison without a second thought. My younger siblings have barely ever tasted meat. That sweetness of yours, it's all an act." But Psyche proves with action that her kindness is real. Watching Psyche wade through the rain to rescue the rabbit, Lila feels something shift inside her, as if she too has been healed. Back at the estate, Lila even helps feed the rabbit warm milk. As a thank you, Psyche has milk tea prepared for the two of them to share. Psyche also has a collection of unused storybooks gathered up and sent as gifts for Lila's younger siblings. Lila, who had doubted her so fiercely, is won over. Just like that. In recognition of Lila's loyalty, Psyche arranges for her to leave the washing yard behind. But the lemon-headed bald one mutters, "My lady really is as naive as a fool." Lila, unable to stomach it, lands a punch and knocks the turncoat flat. The bald one drops to his knees, whimpering and begging for forgiveness. The day finally comes to visit Medea, and Psyche is practically glowing with excitement. She has so many secrets saved up to whisper to her best friend. Psyche tells Medea she doesn't know whether she should eat venison. It just feels like such a waste. Medea cuts straight to the point. Then just hold it in your mouth without swallowing or spitting it out. You need to learn to be a little braver. Now that your father's situation has been resolved, it's time to think about what you want for yourself. The words bring a rush of painful memories. Everything the Crown Prince put her through. So Psyche resolves to uncover the source of her own power. That way, she can put the Crown Prince behind her and grow stronger. Just then, Pearl bursts through the door. Medea, timing this perfectly, says, "Perhaps you need a priest who knows the temple to help you. Like the gentleman standing right in front of you, who is absolutely head over heels for you." Medea finishes with the most satisfied smile, watching the two of them like a proud matchmaker. Pearl strolls into the Duke's estate parlor representing the temple, here to discuss the handling of donated assets with Medea. He never expected to find the woman of his dreams, Psyche, sitting right there in the parlor. Medea, ever the schemer, smiles sweetly and says she must have mixed up the appointment time. She turns to Pearl, red as a beet, and asks if he'd mind having Psyche stay for their conversation. How could Pearl possibly mind? His burning face already gives him away. "Of course," he blurts out. The guard standing nearby, hopelessly single, can barely watch. "Your Grace, Psyche is the betrothed Crown Princess." Pearl fires back with conviction, "Which is exactly why I have every right to be involved in matters of state." The guard has no reply to that. So Psyche and Pearl end up side by side while Medea opens discussions on the donated assets. Pearl pretends to follow along, but he keeps tilting his head to steal glances at Psyche. Medea worries that the politically naive Pearl could easily be caught off guard by something trivial. Pearl admits it's a real problem. Medea suggests he simply show his face more often among the new reform faction. Psyche listens to their heated back and forth and feels her head is about to explode. Though both have tried their best to use simple language for her sake, Psyche, never the scholar, is still hopelessly lost. When the meeting finally wraps up and Medea walks them out, she casually asks Psyche if there's anything she'd like to ask the cardinal. Psyche blinks blankly. Then she remembers. Medea mentioned that visiting the temple library requires a senior priest as escort. Psyche immediately bows at a full 90 degrees, asking Pearl to take her there. Pearl accepts with barely concealed delight. Medea catches a glimpse of the loveless guard still still hovering nearby and suppresses a laugh. You're still here? You really are invisible, aren't you? Psyche follows Pearl to the central library, takes one look at the towering stacks of materials, and lets out a groan. How could anyone possibly get through all of this? Pearl, still too flustered in front of her, slips into formal speech without even noticing. Because you go through everything, official records, unofficial accounts, all of it. Psyche doesn't pick up on his nervousness at all. She just sighs that after all this searching, there's not a single record on divinity to be found. Another 100 rounds through this and she'd come up with nothing. Pearl cheers her on with enthusiasm. You still have to keep reading until the end. The ever-bright Psyche lights up. Then let's do our best together. Faced with that radiant, warm smile, Pearl's heart pounds wildly, and yet he can't bring himself to look at her. But somehow, strangely, he notices his eye has stopped hurting, simply because Medea has become the head of House Belial. The malicious collateral branch is already scheming to turn her into a complete puppet. Their plan, cripple her first, then force a man on her to get her with child, wait for her to produce an heir to the house, then cut down the crippled Medea and seize full control of the Duke's estate. Today, Medea and her companions head to the northern village for volunteer work. Pearl, always one for an outing, asks Medea if it doesn't feel good to get out once in a while. Medea, stiff from the cold, refuses to agree. Pearl pushes back. You can't just donate money and call it done. Helio watches the two bicker and steps in to cut it short. Then let's make this quick. Pearl and Helio are immediately at each other's throats. Why did you bring this unpleasant fellow along? Helio shoots back. How could I let Lady Medea go out alone with a reckless fool like you? Unlike his sharp tongue toward Pearl, Helio turns warmly to Medea and congratulates her once again on becoming Duke. He says he's overjoyed that he can now serve her openly and without shame. The children nearby spot Helio and gasp. This great hero of the Empire's wars is impossibly handsome. They push and shove for a chance to shake his hand. The orphanage director steps out to explain. The children have always loved hearing stories about Marquis Helio. Surrounded by his little admirers, Helio happily teaches the children basic swordsmanship. Pearl and Medea chat idly. If Psyche were here, she would absolutely love this. Psyche isn't idle either. Since Medea has donated all her assets, Psyche is working around the clock to finish a gown for Medea before the Imperial Palace banquet. She refuses to let her idol be embarrassed. She's certain Medea will love it. Then the memory creeps in, the time those so-called nobles mocked her, and Psyche feels a familiar sting of sadness. She hadn't known back then that wearing the same gown twice simply wasn't done. Those noble ladies had smiled and said she must really love that pink dress of hers. She had been quite pleased with herself. Looking back now, it makes her cringe. As the carriage arrives at the Count's estate, Psyche is about to step out when she's told a visitor is waiting for her. She made no such appointment. Puzzled, she steps down and finds His Holiness the Pope waiting for her. Meanwhile, far away in the northern village, Medea and Helio are still at their volunteer work. They gather around a fireplace, waiting for roasted sweet potatoes to finish. The assassins who have been watching from a distance grow impatient. When is Medea ever going to be alone? That marquis sticks to her side like a shadow. There's no opening. Still, the thought of facing Helio head-on fills them with dread. Just then, nature calls. Helio heads across the bridge to relieve himself. The assassins seize the moment and send one of their men in with a dagger to take Medea down. A surprise attack is one thing, but letting your opponent take your weapon is another. Those are the last words the man hears before he dies. In an instant, a group of figures in black appear on the other side of the bridge. Helio, having only pretended to leave, steps back in front of Medea. Medea tilts her head. She knows exactly who sent them without even thinking. A few flies buzzing around. How tedious. At this, one of the assassins snarls at her. How cowardly. Always hiding behind the marquis. Medea smirks. None of you are worth the trouble of my own hands. But on this narrow bridge, the limited range favors the smaller side, and all 7 assassins across know it. Facing Helio, they tremble and break into a cold sweat. Then, with a crash, the fight begins. Medea steps forward and hurls one assassin clean over her shoulder. She drives a dagger into the next. She spins, and another drops dead, an arrow through his throat. Medea finishes without even breaking a sweat, which leaves the spy watching from behind a tree utterly stunned. Lady Medea's combat ability is terrifying, truly one in a million. But just as the spy turns to leave, Medea has already spotted her. Psyche's situation is far less dangerous by comparison. Still, an unannounced visit from His Holiness the Pope leaves her baffled. He wears his usual gentle smile. It's nothing serious. I simply don't like you getting too close to that child. Everyone knows Pearl is His Holiness's adopted son. It seems Psyche has run into a future mother-in-law determined to keep them apart. His Holiness explains, Pearl has not yet been formally ordained. If anyone were to suggest an improper relationship between Pearl and the betrothed crown princess, that is what concerns me most. A secretary cardinal must be above reproach. A scandal would be devastating. Words make Psyche break into a cold sweat. Every word hits like a needle. There's no way to argue back. His Holiness adds, but it's nothing serious. Just be more careful going forward. Psyche, however, is no pushover. She asks His Holiness directly, if appearances matter so much, why come to the Count's estate to find her so openly? Could it be intentional? At that, the smile finally slips from His Holiness's face. Psyche can't explain it, but she has a feeling. This Pope, champion of peace and paragon of virtue, is deeply dangerous. What His Holiness says next chills her to the bone. The reports I received today are riddled with gaps. Today's outing was unusual. Psyche doesn't follow what riddle is being played. Then His Holiness begins listing her own activities back to her. Over the past month, 30 practice sessions, 10 outings for sword training, visits to an herb shop, a general store, and a bookshop, 47 books purchased, 12 pieces of jewelry pawned. You've worked so hard, you really have changed. Psyche is stunned. How does His Holiness know all of this? She reaches out and grabs His Holiness by the sleeve, demanding answers. His Holiness simply lifts that smile again and offers a kindly warning. Psyche, my dear, you only need to stay by His Highness's side knowing nothing. That is what's best for everyone. Psyche can barely stomach the humiliation. This supposed concern concern for everyone is nothing but a way to isolate Pearl and give the Crown Prince the chance to have her killed. Back in the village, Medea and Helio work together to tie up the spy who had been watching them. Medea asks who sent her. The spy dissolves into tears, saying her master will kill her anyway if she goes back empty-handed. Medea is unmoved. If you won't talk, we can end it here. The spy cries out. It was the collateral branch of the Belial family who sent her. Their goal to abduct Duke Medea and turn her into a baby-making machine. Helio's expression darkens the moment he hears this. The spy quickly adds that her own master was firmly against it. Medea nods as if confirming a suspicion. So even the collateral branch is divided into two factions. As agreed, Medea prepares to release her. She wasn't sent by the Crown Prince, so there's no satisfaction in finishing her off. But the price of release, Medea puts out one of her eyes. Helio, still burning with rage at what he just heard, asks Medea's permission to take out the other one himself. Just then, Pearl appears. At the absolute worst moment, he immediately confronts them both. Didn't you agree to change? Why are you back to bullying the weak? Medea is completely unbothered. Is this because you've lost an eye too and feel a certain kinship? Pearl tries to press further, but Helio shoves him aside with a blade at his throat. One more word and it'll cost you your life. Pearl tells Helio to calm down. Helio demands to know how he's supposed to stay calm. Those bodies over there, those were people who planned to cripple Lady Medea and use her as a baby-making machine. The people you protect would do the same to Psyche, and you know their schemes, yet you stand by and do nothing. If Lady Medea were taken, would you just say, go file a report? Pearl is unmoved. None of that has happened yet. As punishment, this is already enough. Medea sighs. This argument, even losing an eye wouldn't knock any sense into you. Helio is furious enough to go for Pearl's other eye, but Medea puts a stop to the whole spectacle. Helio spares the eye but can't resist landing a punch on this bleeding heart fool all the same. Pearl retreats inside to tend to his wound, grumbling nonstop under the authority of his rank as Secretary Cardinal. But once Medea explains everything, Pearl concedes. Well, when you put it that way, I suppose I understand. Then Pearl starts telling tales on Helio. This isn't the first time he's been hit. It goes back to the Empire's War. Pearl had been living among villagers at the border when enemy troops launched a surprise attack one day. The village militia fought back and captured every last one of the enemy soldiers alive. When General Helio arrived, he ordered all the prisoners executed. Pearl protested fiercely. They didn't harm any villagers. What right do you have to kill these prisoners? Helio stayed calm and explained to this fool, mercy toward your enemy is cruelty toward yourself. Could you stand before the bodies of all those Imperial soldiers killed by this enemy and say this war could have ended peacefully? Could you? Medea listens to all of this and can only say, it really is hard to take your side. Pearl still doesn't understand. He says that night he overheard the enemy soldiers talking about wanting to go home, and he couldn't help but think, these soldiers are just pawns used by their country. They're so pitiful. After all that, Pearl finally says something that matters. My eyes are meant to see what even the gods cannot, the hidden reasons behind things, and I judge by a human standard. It is only now that Medea understands the divine power held within Pearl's eyes. Pearl then speaks of his past. He was an orphan, taken in by His Holiness the Pope. When he came of age, His Holiness sent Pearl away from the temple. His eyes carry the ability to discern good from evil in people. His Holiness said it would be wrong to keep him confined here, and sent him out into the world to do good before returning. After their talk, Pearl points out the window. Helio is slumped alone against a tree. Medea realizes just how much her loyal pup has been holding in. She walks over to him. Helio breaks down, sobbing his heart out. He says, if Lady Medea ever wants to walk a righteous path, let him be the one to clear every evil from her way. It's impossible not to feel for him. This towering man kneels before Medea, looking for all the world like a lost dog with nowhere to go. He asks in a trembling voice, you used to tell me to fill the enemy's mind with such fear that they abandon all thought of causing harm. But now you're laying down your sword. How am I supposed to accept that? Anyone who plots against you, are we supposed to forgive them unconditionally like Pearl would? Watching Helio sob so hard he can barely breathe, Medea tells him to breathe. She'd rather not have him pass out from crying. Helio obeys immediately, and only then does he feel like he can breathe again. So that Helio won't keep worrying, Medea tells him, no matter what, she will never let him see her dead, and she will always stand in front of him. Those words steady him completely. Helio buries his face against Medea's chest, drawing in every last bit of warmth and comfort. This village trip, despite the assassination attempt, brought Medea an unexpected gift. From a little girl in the village, a handmade hairpin of ribbon and twigs. Medea treasures it. Back at the temple, Pearl returns to find someone waiting to deal with him. His Holiness the Pope, his adoptive parent. Pearl knows exactly what this is about. Keep his distance from Medea. Follow all of Medea's plans, only as His Holiness dictates. His Holiness treats him as nothing more than a piece on a board. Pearl is a Secretary Cardinal in title only. His Holiness adds with full conviction, you've been away from the temple so long, I worry about putting you in charge of finances. Pearl can't argue with that, but Medea had given him a plan in advance. The priestly robes are a means of consolidating internal support. The Cardinal himself must be the one to distribute them. Pearl, straightforward as he is, hadn't quite grasped it at the time. But now he steps forward eagerly, facing the very person trying to strip him of all authority, and asks for the seemingly insignificant post. Please give me the task of distributing the priestly robes. It would let me greet the priests properly. His Holiness, with no grounds to refuse, agrees. Some priests put on the fine new robes and beam with barely hidden delight. Others look at the fabric and say it is far too extravagant. The current robes can last for years yet, and the money for these came from donations. It should go to those who truly need it. And that is exactly the point Medea had in mind. Use the robes to separate the corrupt from the upright among the priests. Pearl begins building ties with the honest, upright priests, the perfect first step toward reforming the temple from within.